Hey everyone, we are now hopefully live, and I am here with OtakuDaiKun, as promised. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I am OtakuDaiKun, another YouTube anime-tuber, I guess you call it, but like VTuber because we use the avatars and whatnot. Um, a lot of my channel tends to revolve around like Fate Stay Night, Fate stuff, but that's not my ultimate goal. I try to make like about half of my videos talking about just anything anime related, video games, JRPGs, all that stuff, and yeah, pretty much.
Cool. I've just noticed that where I have the monitoring switched on, whenever you're speaking, it's making the mouth of my avatar move as well.
Oh
We
shoot,
look
yeah.
kind of weird. Okay, I'll try and fix that. There shouldn't be, that should get rid of the echo as well. Turned it down as much as I
Headphones
can.
should solve that, yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm listening to you on the headphones, but I've got monitoring on my speakers, and I think I forgot to turn them down, so it's picking up stuff it shouldn't be.
Gotcha.
Okay, hopefully that should sound better, but let me know if it doesn't. Okay, so I was looking through some of your previous videos today, and what I found particularly interesting was one you did about the issues with the way certain critics cover anime. Particularly in the case of the video, I'm talking about the anime feminist website. And I thought this was something I would like to talk to you about because very recently I kind of got into, I don't want to say an argument, but a discussion with one of the writers for that website around isekai and how she feels that isekai can, you know, be problematic and all of that sort of thing. And a lot of what she was talking about, you know, it wasn't obvious, but she was mainly sort of referencing Shield Hero. And with Shield Hero coming up for season 2, I thought it would be a good time to kind of discuss the way that certain people view that genre and you know, the way that people tend to view things through certain different lenses when they're critiquing them. And you know, I know you feel quite strongly against censorship and things like that, while still respecting the fact that, you know, sometimes people find things problematic for legitimate reasons. So, you know, kind of wanted to get your thoughts on the anime feminist viewpoints in general.
Yeah. Um, I mean, in their case, it was just there's a lot of shows that I would consider to be very, wholesome and whatnot. Like I was referencing Akebi-chan and whatnot in this case.
Yeah,
And that was it's a very cute show. And I figure like every single thing I could think of that'd be like, oh yeah, that might bother someone. I go to that website. I'm like, yep, it bothered them. And that's just kind of frustrating because I guess it's like up to you at that point whether you find that to be like, oh no, look at her feet. The artist has too much attention to her feet. I'm like, this artist draws like everything with phenomenal detail.
yeah,
So I don't necessarily, maybe they have a foot fetish, but I don't know. I guess maybe
yeah.
that's not the worst thing out there.
I mean, I think basically there are two ways you can critique things. And the way that I normally approach it is from a more sort of technical standpoint. It's like, is the writing in this good in terms of doing what it's trying to do? So I think it's reasonable to critique things like pacing or, you know, fan service when it's used in a way that doesn't fit the tone of a scene or something like that, and it kind of takes you out of the moment. I think those kind of critiques, when you are thinking about how effective something is, really, everything should have a target audience, and if you just accept that it does, then you can analyze how well it uses what it's trying to do to meet the expectations of that audience, exceed them, or, you know, it might fail at those things by making technical mistakes. And that's how I tend to approach things. So usually if I say something has issues, it's usually in the sense that it wasn't clear who it was for, or it did a mystery plot that was too easy to figure out, or something like that, rather than their kind of approach, which is more critiquing the audience. It's like, if you accept that things are made for a specific audience, then from a technical standpoint, you can critique whether or not it's good at what it does. But if you take a step back further and say, does that audience deserve to have the things they want shown? That's when you start to get into this kind of thing, where it's like, well, fan service just shouldn't be allowed, or fan service doesn't appeal to me, so it's a bad thing to include in anything. And I think that kind of goes beyond critiquing the media itself. You're no longer critiquing media, you're critiquing society. And I just think it's perhaps a little bit outside of the scope of someone who's reviewing anime to be doing that.
A little bit, yeah. Like, in the middle of the Akebi review, as I'm reading it, it just goes on a tangent, or, yeah, like about a paragraph or so, just being like, oh yeah, well, there's CP in the world, and it's on the rise. There are various manga creators being outed for having it, I guess, and as a result, that should, I don't want to think about that while I'm writing the review, but I can't help it. I'm like, well, don't though, because it's separate. It's a separate thing, because I don't think anyone necessarily who's liking an artist's work is supporting of what they do when they, get caught with CP or something like that. Like the Rurouni Kenshin thing. Should we stop being enjoyable about that show because of what the author did?
Yeah, I mean,
I would argue
that's kind of one of those things that becomes it's debatable, how you personally feel about, do you feel like you no longer want to support someone who has committed a crime? People can have their own views on that. But when it comes to, is the work affected by it? It's like, well, no, there was nothing in Rurouni Kenshin that hinted towards him having those kinds of tastes. So, you wouldn't have been able to guess that was kind of what he was into. It's a similar thing. Do you remember there was a series a few years ago, Recovery of an MMO Junkie?
Yep.
Yeah, it was a romance series. It was quite good, I thought. But on Twitter, the author was shown to have some quite strong anti-Semitic views. And so he got cancelled, as you would expect. And now nobody ever talks about that series anymore. It's almost like it didn't exist. And you feel like when you're talking about something where it might be relevant, talking about romance or something like that in anime, and I felt that it was a good romance anime series. You can't talk about that show anymore. It's like it's been kind of deleted from everyone's memory because nobody wants to support what the guy stood for, quite openly in his political views, or I don't know if you can really call being a massive racist like normal political views, but it's like you almost don't want to be tainted by the things the author talked about himself. And
and it's hard when it's an ongoing author like that, but at the same time, when you experience it, you don't know that, you develop a fandom for it, you enjoy the work on its own. And, obviously, whether you want to, support that financially or culturally after the fact is one thing. But at the very least, your fandom for that show was innocent or totally reasonable.
Yeah, because there was nothing in the series that had anything to do with any of that stuff. It certainly wasn't preaching his views in the anime or in the story. There were no characters that had anything to do with how he felt about what he personally felt. So you certainly couldn't say that it had any influence on his work. And the same sort of applies with Rurouni Kenshin. It's like there's nothing in there that you can say, well, we should have known from the start that this guy was shady. And nobody, you have to make your own mind up about whether you want to continue to read it or watch it. But I think the fans don't share in any blame there. And it's also completely separate from any question of whether someone who includes a lolly character in their manga or whatever is necessarily up to the same sort of thing, you know? Because
Yeah, absolutely.
Rurouni Kenshin didn't have that kind of stuff in it, and yet there we are. Whereas many authors have done doujins, have done erotic stuff, same as many Western authors, including me, have written adult stuff. And it's just part of a career path, really. It's not usually your own fetishes or whatever. It's usually just, what is there an audience for? What will sell? And what can I write convincingly? And it doesn't really mean anything. It's, you know, I just feel like the kind of let's view it through a feminist lens thing, it's saying that somehow it supports people having misogynistic views or something for an anime to have some upskirt shots or some accidental groping or any of those tropes that are kind of slapstick. They're not really, it's not like hardcore porn, is it? It's just like, oh look, someone accidentally groped someone, or there's a hot spring episode and the usual shenanigans ensue. It's like, well, if someone wants to write that or draw that and some other people want to watch it, then by criticizing the show for having it, you're not criticizing the show, you're criticizing the fact that that's the thing people like. And it seems like if you really have a problem with that, why are you devoting your time to talking about anime, or to talking about anime that has fan service? You know, just leave it alone. It's got nothing to do with you if you're not in the target audience.
Mm-hmm. And that's the thing that a lot of people talk about, is the term gatekeeping and whatnot. And it sounds really toxic, like you don't want people as a part of that fandom, but it's like, no, that's really not true. All you're trying to do is say, we welcome anybody who actually likes what we're trying to enjoy. And I'm like, I don't even consider that really gatekeeping at a certain point.
No.
Because I think it's fascinating. Are you watching Dress Up Darling?
Yeah.
Yeah. I just think it's interesting, the character Marin Kitagawa, and how she's way more of an otaku than, you know, the guy she's teaching all this stuff to. And she goes like on this rant, like, ooh, I love this character, that underboob is awesome and stuff like that. And it's the kind of thing, it's like, well, yeah, no, anime is not trying to, these kinds of anime at least aren't trying to keep out, you know, women especially. It's just sort of like, this is what they're doing, and if there happens to be a woman who likes that, then that's wonderful, you know. So it's rather inclusive. It's not trying to chase people out.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of women like Dress Up Darling. They like Marin. They relate to that character, and it's, you know, the first episode, the big joke is the fact that the character she's obsessed with is from an eroge, but it's kind of like, well, that's actually lots of girls like that kind of thing, you know. It's not, and she says that, it's like, nobody's trying to stop women from being interested in anime or being interested in that stuff. The gatekeeping is for people who don't really actually enjoy anime the way it is. They want it to be something different and feel like, rather than trying to understand it and enjoy it just as it is now and choose the things from within the medium that suit their tastes, they instead want to complain about how it doesn't align with what they're used to or what they want to see. And usually it comes from a place where they don't really know what they're talking about. It's like, all the big anime have fan service, but they don't. Attack on Titan doesn't, Jujutsu Kaisen doesn't. You know, there's plenty of very, very popular anime that doesn't have any of that stuff in, and there's plenty that does. So there's not really a problem. You just pick what you like and talk about what you like. No one's trying to keep you out if you're uncomfortable with fan service or uncomfortable with lollies. You can just watch one of the many, many very popular shows that doesn't have it if it bothers you, and leave the people who do want to watch it to, talk about its merits as a thing for that audience. And I think
Yeah,
that's...
that's always a tricky part because shoot, I'm kind of losing what I was gonna say, but no, it
Sorry,
has
I
to
kind of
be
went off on one.
no, you're good. It had to do with that. About there being a little bit of something for everyone. And certain shows get really, really popular, and I think people want to be in on that conversation even when the show isn't for them. And that's one of the things I think that drags it out through like Twitter and things like that. Like, less than the show existing, it's more like, well, I can't believe there's this many people who actually like it. And that becomes the criticism too.
Yeah. But if you know an audience exists and you want to create something that appeals to that audience, then really you can only be judged on how well you make something for that audience. Everyone's trying to serve an audience when they create entertainment, at least when it's commercial. You can say that like fan service in fan fiction could be a reflection of somebody's own personal kinks or whatever, but in commercial fiction, it's like, well, we know that people enjoy this type of character. It doesn't matter if it's men or women, whoever you're trying to appeal to. We know what people enjoy. And so you can create things to appeal to that market. When you're not clear on who your market is, you end up with something like High Guardian Spice,
Now, someone was asking before with the $10 super chat regarding specifically the West getting involved with Japanese ideas and things. What would you say to that?
Like I said, it does kind of tie into the same thing. It's like, if you want to have an encouraging view of it, like I feel like maybe using data from Western viewing could help them to produce more things that will do well for them and support the industry. I don't think that Western fans should be completely ignored as a market, but when Western fans are trying to say anime itself has a problem and the Japanese audience doesn't think that it does, obviously the Japanese audience needs to take priority, because that's your market, that's who you're making this stuff for. We're just a secondary market,
Mm-hmm.
So,
And I don't know, obviously we are in that market. So in that regard, like, I used to like localization. I was kind of like naive for it as a kid, being like, oh yeah, they changed that line to make it sound more like aggressive or badass in English or something. Like, that sounds kind of cool. But now I'm realizing more that it's just, I just want whatever the Japanese had. Like, I want to know what it was. And, a dub, I don't hate dubs. It's just that if the dub is trying to be its own thing and not accurately represent the original work, that becomes really frustrating.
yeah, I totally agree with that. I mean, I made a pretty long video about why I don't personally watch dubs. I still think that it's a good thing for them to exist. There are a lot of people who wouldn't get into the medium otherwise that still get a lot of appreciation out of it. But it's also the case that when you start changing things, we're no longer on the same page. We're not talking about the same moment as a Japanese viewer or somebody watching a dub in a different language. I like the way that we can watch the same show. We live in different countries. There are, I live in Italy. Most of my friends watch Italian subtitles, not English ones. So we've watched different translations of the same shows. And yet, because they haven't been too heavily localized, we can still, we know the same jokes were in the show. It's not like they've tried to make something that Italian people can relate to in the Italian sub,
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I just want to, while we're talking about this question that was raised by Cody Coco with the $10 super chat, I just want to go up and do the ada-adas for the people who have given super chats.
Absolutely.
So you get ada-ada. Thank you, Cody Coco. We are currently talking about your questions, so I won't read that one out. And ada-ada. Thank you, Yukito Online. He says, what's up, Natalie and Daikun? I think that's all of them. Okay, yes. Normally I do adas. When I had Necro on last week, everyone was trying to get him to say it. So don't be surprised if people start trying to make you ada.
I've learned to be rather shameless as far as what I'm gonna say on streams and things, so I'm not nervous about that at all.
Was it you that did the adas on your Fate memes video?
Yeah, I had it at the start, but it wasn't like me. That was just I cut to Mario to troll everyone.
But you did say ada yourself.
Oh, did I? I probably have.
Unless you got someone else to do those lines, I don't know. But
if it was the Dai-chan character, then that would be my wife's voice. But if it's me and myself, then yeah.
Yeah, I wasn't sure actually because you were using the memes from Fate, so it could have been either of your voices. You know, because when you're acting, it's a bit harder to tell if it's the which of you is doing the voice. But
well, it would be the female version of me, like it's a separate character.
Yeah, no, I've seen videos that she's done, like the tomboy one. That was Dai-chan. She has a really nice voice, actually. It's a really nice speaking voice.
Thank you. She's she gets compliments like that and just like, oh, I don't know what to do with that, but she likes it. Like, she's not as self-confident as other people. I'm like, no, you could totally rock this. And then somebody says they're trying to send a super chat, but it's not working. I don't know what you're trying to type in the super chat. If there's like a link or something it might think is spam, maybe.
Yeah, normally it should only remove things it thinks are spam. I don't have any weird settings that should stop you from saying anything you want to say. Ada, thank you, 12 Shazamai 55. Do you watch Overlord? I do, for sure, and I'm trying to catch up with the light novels before the new season comes out in the summer, so I will be doing a lot of Overlord content in the summer once the new season starts airing, but I had to switch to Shield Hero because I wanted to catch up on Shield Hero before season 2, which is the next season to come out. So of the shows I wanted to cover, I switched from reading Overlord at about volume 5 to reading Shield Hero, just so that I can get caught up on that in time to make some sort of deep dive content once the season's out. How about you? You a fan of Overlord?
I started Overlord, did not continue it necessarily. I like the idea. You know, as an isekai, being extremely familiar with the environment that you're isekai'd into immediately is interesting. Like it was his game that he was playing, and then all of a sudden he's like, whoa, well now I get to actually like carry it out in real life. I know who all these minions of mine are.
But I think what was interesting with Overlord at the start, you know, the basic premise is that there's kind of that double isekai thing, because he's isekai'd into the tomb that he created with his guild, and all of the NPCs that they created have come to life. But the whole tomb itself has been isekai'd into like another world that he doesn't know anything about, and neither do any of the NPCs. So there's this kind of like two layers. It's like fractal isekai.
Yeah, when it comes to isekai itself, I tend to judge them as just like, no, I don't have anything special for the genre itself, but I will really like an isekai if it's just a good fantasy story, and it just happens to be isekai. I think that's one of my favorites about Mushoku Tensei.
Yeah. I just want to quickly address, we've got Gonzalez of Irithil, has mentioned a couple of times. I was actually wrong about the MMO Junkie thing. It was apparently the director and not the author of the series. I'm not actually sure if that was anime original, actually thinking about it. So in any case, it was supposedly the director and not the author, just in case I was kind of slandering the author there.
Right.
Thank
do
you for
remember
the
that.
correction there. Okay, so we were talking about Overlord. Sorry, I just got distracted there by that. Having read some of the light novels, because you were talking about Mushoku Tensei, the Overlord light novels are actually incredibly well written. I really enjoy the books. I've got to say, sometimes when you read a light novel, it can feel like very basic writing, you know, sort of not bad, but very much like something a skilled but beginner level person might do. You know, reading Shield Hero actually made me think about this, because Shield Hero, the books, feel very... There's a lack of confidence in the writing that you can feel even though it's a translation. Whereas Mushoku Tensei, Overlord, and ReZero, I would say there is this like level of finesse in the writing that comes through even in a translation that you just don't see in a lot of light novels. You know, it's not expected in terms of the standard, but these three just go way above and beyond what you would normally expect from the writing, to the point where you can see why things like Mushoku Tensei get compared to, you know, fantasy classics from literature, you know, rather than just, this is throwaway fast fiction for, you know, a young adult audience.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's usually like the isekai gimmick or the mechanic, how well it's used in the story, and how much it could be a good story if you just completely took that part out and it was just Rudius was just a dude who happened to be a prodigy in that world, as opposed to having that problematic first life. It's such a
Yeah.
quick little thing they do at the beginning, and he gets these little helps, you know, like tips from a god he doesn't know anything about or whatever, mysterious figure
Yeah.
who jokes with him in the void. But
Well, yeah, I don't want to spoil anything because you're
yeah,
anime
we don't
only
need
on
to
Mushoku,
spoil
right?
that, but it's
But
yeah.
that guy's an interesting character.
Can I
There's
talk to see the
definitely
chats? Yes, I can.
there's definitely not a the same kind of thing going on as, because one of my friends, Jake Zeb123, I think some of my audience know who he is because he does a ReZero channel. He was watching Mushoku Tensei and started reading it, and when it got to the bit that was in the first season where Orsted kills, or you think he's killed, Rudius, he was saying he was kind of expecting it to be like Konosuba or something, where he'd actually been killed, but the god then lets him go back and try again. And I think it surprised a lot of people that the god character isn't the one who reincarnated him or can resurrect him or anything like that. He's not the usual god character that you get in an isekai who's in control of that aspect of things. And so that's a kind of interesting twist when you're used to seeing, okay, you die, you meet the god, they send you to a new world, they give you some skills and all of that. Yeah, Mushoku Tensei doesn't have any of that.
Yeah. Someone asked what my favorite character is. Eris or G-Lane? G-Lane's pretty
Yeah, same
earnest. That's what I like about her.
same choices as me. I think I just like I like the fact that Ghislaine has like the biceps for brains. She's my kind of girl.
Yeah, she's loyal and honest, and I think there's something admirable about that.
Yeah, and she's cute. She's got fluffy ears. And whenever I'm working out, I always like to think I've got to work out hard so I can get abs like us.
Oh yeah. Good inspiration.
Definitely.
Even if it's like the far end of the spectrum.
She has the abs of insanity. Have you seen the OVA yet?
Yes. The Goblin Slayer.
Yeah. Since you're a big
Era's the
fan.
Goblin Slayer, not Goblin Slayer.
Oh god, I had so many problems with that because I made a video long ago when that OVA was first announced that it was going to be made, which was while the first season was still airing, saying, oh, there's, you know, some skipped content because they're going to make the Eris Goblin Slayer chapter into an OVA, because that was the name of the chapter in the light novels. And people were like, wait, is it set in the same universe as Goblin Slayer? Or is there going to be a crossover? And I'm like, no, it's just, she just slays some goblins and that's what he called it. I can't. But that got me thinking, like, how good would a crossover be? I'd love to see how the characters in Goblin Slayer would react to Eris.
Mm-hmm. The mortality of it is kind of the interesting thing, too, because the first thing that Goblin Slayer hammers home is that what looks like your typical happy, tropey, let's go hunt goblins kind of basic intro quest you'd see in a JRPG. It's like, nope, they're actually getting killed. It's this horrible, horrible thing, and they make you take it seriously. And that's kind of what they do in the whole Eris thing, is you got this naive prince who's like, yeah, I can take it, and then she takes him out for a while, and it's like, you don't know what it's like to have to actually like fight someone to the death, and how serious that really is.
I don't know. I mean, I think Cliff, there are other reasons why Cliff can't do anything when Eris is fighting against the assassins. Because there are all kinds of political implications. He's not actually weak. You know, it wasn't an indication that he wouldn't have been able to do anything. I don't think he could have taken them, but he certainly wouldn't have got involved in that situation for reasons relating to who he is and the situation in that country. But Eris, you know, she's a simple-minded character, and that's what she's like. She's like, I want to be like Regerd and protect these kids, you know. She sees a child in danger, she just goes straight in. She doesn't think about whether she can win. She doesn't think about, you know, what kind of implications her winning might have. She's just like, nope, you don't threaten a kid because Regerd said so, and I'm going to sort you out.
Yeah.
It's brilliant.
Well, I didn't mean to imply that he was weak per se, but certainly naive in the sense. I don't know if he didn't seem like the kind of person who's, you know, had to kill anybody, I guess.
Yeah, that's probably true. But then Eris hasn't either. And she kind of, I don't know, she kind of took it in her stride. I guess she kind of probably always felt that she would end up having to kill people, so doing it in the first time she had to actually fight against a human and take a life, I don't think it really, you know, there are some things where you think it's going to be like monumental, it's going to be a big deal, but because you've been around them so much that when they happen they're not a big deal, like, you know.
Well, she had definitely fought people up to that point for sure.
And so I think that it's kind of interesting the way that a lot of authors with a lot of characters will be like, okay, the first time someone kills someone, that's going to have a big impact on them. Whereas in this case, it's like Eris is the kind of character where she notices that it's the first time she's done that. She is unnerved by the fact it was a battle to the death, and that's the first time she's ever been in that kind of danger on her own. But she also doesn't have angst about it, you know, she doesn't start, oh, I killed someone, I took a life, and that's important and meaningful in my arc. It's just, no, that's just something that was inevitable. You know, it was going to happen sooner or later.
Yeah. Well, she might have learned that, you know, in her tutelage, too, because, you know, Ghislaine definitely has been used to that.
Ghislaine's done a lot of things.
Goblin Slayer has a VTuber? I did not hear of that.
There's a VTuber of Goblin Slayer himself.
I mean, I'm not surprised.
I think that would be really cool, actually. Just... and he'd just tell you to shut up if you were talking about anything other than goblins.
Exactly, I was going to say, like, his personality. Brilliant. Someone asked, what do you think of manhwa? So that's like the Korean mangas and whatnot.
Manhwa.
I haven't really read a lot of them. And I know some of them are getting adaptations, like, what is it, God of High School? Was that an anime original? I thought it was based on a...
No, that was based on a webtoon. So they're like...
A webtoon, okay.
The web-based Korean manhwa. There was God of High School. There was also Tower of God. That was another one. And Noblesse. And they were all Crunchyroll originals, so that's probably where you had it in your head that they were originals. But they were all based on webtoons. I don't really read manhwa so far. I'd like to, but trying to fit in all the light novels I have to read is kind of...
I wouldn't discriminate against them. It's just a matter of one coming out that's as interesting or good as stuff I'm already reading, yeah.
a lot of people do really rate Solo Leveling. I'm not sure about it because my boyfriend read it and he said it was kind of boring. But I don't know, I'd give it a go. Oh, Stairs in Zhanja novels. I did read one Zhanja series, which is like the Chinese novels, where usually they're very similar actually in influence and style to God of High School. It basically draws on those kind of Chinese tropes, where usually it's a character kind of like they can cultivate abilities and they kind of level up, but exponentially just forever until they're basically like the most powerful being in existence, you know. And they go on, and it's mostly just scaling of power, but they're so addictive. Like, I started reading this one series and it wasn't even a good translation, you know, of the Chinese, and yet I couldn't stop reading it, even though it was just like each time he just fights something stronger, he gets some new weapons, he gets a bit more powerful. Yeah, I just couldn't stop reading it. I read something like 40 volumes of that novel. I can't even remember what it was called.
We've got a super chat.
Yes.
Mentioning me and the Fate stuff.
Do a little ara, and then I hope you can respond to him. Ara, thank you, Carl de Grober. And he is thanking you for the Type Moon videos. So much info about the servants. It's not that I don't like Fate. I do like it, but I've only seen Fate Stay Night. And I've always kind of thought I'd like to get more into it, but it's very daunting. There's like so much content and lore and all of that to get into. So how would you recommend getting into the Fate franchise for somebody new to it?
Okay, well, you said Stay Night, so specifically which one was that? Was that like the Unlimited Blade Works one that came out a little while ago?
No, just the Fate Stay Night original, which mentions Unlimited Blade Works, but as far as I'm aware, Unlimited Blade Works is
okay. So yeah, the 2006 one by Studio Dean.
Yeah, that's right. And Unlimited Blade Works, I think, is just a different route of the same visual novel, as far as I know. So yeah. I haven't seen it, but that it would make sense to probably watch that because you know what it's branching off from, at least. But
yeah, the one tricky thing about the show that you did watch is it's a combination that tries to mix in elements of all three of the main routes into like a single story, which I think they were expecting that to be like the only anime they ever made of Fate Stay Night, which is why they went for that. Yeah. That mostly follows the Fate route, which was Saber's route.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, Unlimited Blade Works is the second. It focuses more on Reen and stuff like that. And then Heaven's Feel. Thankfully now, all three of those technically have been animated. Oh. Basically, if you just watched the one that you already watched, then you move on to Unlimited Blade Works, and you're like, yeah, this is the same Grail War, but things happen differently.
Yeah.
Then, with that, you can go and watch Heaven's Feel movies, and it's the same Grail War again, but just with different things that happen, focusing on different characters.
So when it comes to canon, I guess it's kind of up in the air, really, because where it's based on visual novels where you can take different routes, different events happen depending which route you take, and then what happens next would be a different canon depending which route was followed, right?
Yeah, and the only thing that follows after it is called Fate Hollow Ataraxia, and it was more of like a fan game. So it kind of mixes all three of the routes up anyway. So that there is no like canon route. They kind of play with that.
Oh, okay. So
and that's kind of the benefit is they do all sorts of weird stuff, but it's all just alternate world realities and things. They share elements of the lore, but as far as like what literally happens to the characters depends on the timeline.
Okay, that makes more sense because obviously you want that freedom for whichever route you prefer to be covered, but it's also like, if you then want to cover any consequences from that and say that there's like a history there, you kind of also have to think, which one are we doing? You know? And I think that's... And
then Fate Zero is the prequel, so that's linear. It just runs right into Stay Night. So either one of those three
Okay.
it's compatible with.
Yeah. Okay, so you would suggest...
And so if you just stay in the realm of Fate Stay Night, that's the majority of it, I would say.
Okay, so anime-wise, you could watch just all 3 routes of Fate Stay Night, and then Fate Zero would still make sense, because it's a prequel. But what about things like Grand Order and Apocrypha and things like that?
Apocrypha is another standalone. It's an alternate reality one that's just completely separate. It's like, what if Stay Night didn't happen at all and something else happened, basically.
Okay. So would you watch that after Zero?
You could. Yeah, it's just like another Holy Grail war that introduces new servants and a new... The war itself has new rules so that it allows for a lot more servants fighting each other.
Cool. Okay,
and then Grand Order is, yeah, that's obviously the tricky one, because that's what Fate makes most of its money on nowadays.
And that's the one that has like Astolfo.
Astolfo actually shows up first in Apocrypha.
Okay. Because I want to see that character, because I think he's cool.
Yes, Astolfo's fun. He makes his appearance there. And yeah, I really like Apocrypha, so it's fun. And you just realize that it has cameos of stuff from Fate Stay Night, but it's a separate chronology.
Okay, so really it's not as daunting as it seems, is kind of what you're saying. You can basically, if you watch the 3 Fate Stay Night ones, they're all kind of connected, but other than that, everything can just be kind of treated as its own story within the Fate rules and the Grail Wars kind of thing, but you don't really have to have an understanding of what happened before, because what happened before is kind of in flux depending which universe it is and all of that.
Yeah, most of the connective stuff is it's just like fan service. So it's like, you've played Fate Stay Night, so you'll get this reference or something, but it's usually not critical to the understanding. Fate Grand Order is kind of just them mixing everything into a large cauldron for the mobile game. So pretty much any servant you've ever seen before can be summoned in Fate Grand Order.
Yeah.
And they'll have their same legends and things carry over. But Fate Grand Order itself is its own separate story.
That's cool. Do you have an answer for why King Arthur is Saber, though? Because being English, I'm like, that's not the King Arthur that we had.
Yeah. There's lots of different gender bends for the servants, and King Arthur is surprisingly the one that makes more sense to them, but they're just saying that in Fate, King Arthur has just always been a woman.
Yeah.
And people, because you were expected to be a male if you're a king, everyone just conveniently ignored that fact. And so it got recorded into history as, her being a male and whatnot. She didn't think of herself much as a female. She thought of herself as a king first.
So the fact that it's strange is actually addressed in the plot. It's like...
Yeah,
it just
like in
wasn't
Fate Zero, because
okay.
Kiritsugu, like Shiro's dad is whatever, he's the one that summons her in that, and he's like, wait, what the hell? You're King Arthur? And...
because in Fate Stay Night, it's just kind of accepted. You're Saber, and then you're like, well, she's Saber. What historical figure was she, because... though? And it's like, King Arthur, and you're like, okay, because anime, I'm fine with it, but also I mean, maybe
to a certain degree,
it.
That's what the real answer is for all of those characters. Because it's anime, but they have literal explanations within the world. Yeah. In their case, they're just saying King Arthur's always been a woman, but history remembers him as a man because even the knights that were close to her didn't treat her like a woman. And that's why Mordred, hates being called a woman, not necessarily because she hates being a woman, but because she associates being a woman with someone who cannot be king.
Okay.
And yeah, so it's an interesting thing, but not all the characters feel that way.
Because I thought the king thing might just be one of those where they don't really worry too much about the king-queen distinction in Japanese fiction in general. Like in ReZero, they're talking about who's going to be the next king. And it's like, out of 5 women, who's going to be the next king,
That's true. That's a good point.
Maybe it was just one of those things where they thought, why not king can be a woman because it's just cooler to say king than queen in some cases, so we'll just do that. And they wanted to do a female, so they were just like, well, we'll just say that King Arthur was a woman because it's mythical anyway, so who really cares?
Yeah.
You know.
No,
But the fact they did address it is kind of cool. I think it.
There is a version in the they have what's called Fate Prototype, which is just basically the original ideas they were gonna make into Fate Stay Night. And there is a male Arthur. That was the original design, and it was a female protagonist originally.
Right.
And they decided to swap that around. So that Arthur character exists, but they treat him as like he's from another alternate universe in which King Arthur was male. So they can both interact with each other. But
yeah, because I suppose once you have like infinite universes, you can do what you want. It's kind of like,
oh yeah, they totally embraced that for the sake of Grand Order.
That's I don't know. I mean, it's cool for a gacha game to have that, because you just want to see more cool versions of cool summons. But like for the actual story, I think it's also kind of cool that there is an easy way to explain it, and then you're allowed to do whatever you want. I think it's good. But
yeah, though with Arthur, it's kind of funny because they had to double down and commit to certain things with female King Arthur. That she still married Guinevere, but it was in this case purely political.
Right. And Guinevere was still a woman?
Yes.
Why would there be a political marriage between two women, though? They wouldn't be able to have
the king
children,
needed a queen, I guess. And I don't think she had much interest sexually in anybody at the time. So it was just sort of like...
Yeah, I just know
we'll
that
take
normally like a political marriage would be to produce heirs, which...
Right, which is a good point.
Which they wouldn't be able to do.
Leads into the whole Mordred thing, because the only way that Artoria, as they call her, could have a child in this case was that Merlin turned her into a pseudo-male, as they call it, for a brief time. And that's when Morgan Le Fay sneaks in and takes her seed. And
she kind of got turned into like a futa by Merlin.
That's basically how we all treat it.
This story is awesome. Why have I not read this?
Well, that's the hard part. A lot of King Arthur's backstory, because like when you watch Stay Night, Shiro is a naive master, and she doesn't want to tell her true identity to him at first.
Yeah. And
because he might give that information to the enemy.
Like, if you know nothing about Fate and you just watch Stay Night, which is what I did, you just kind of like, oh, okay, it's King Arthur, because they're all characters of historical importance or legend. And, when you find out that, Saber is King Arthur, it's like, that's cool. That's cool backstory. Everyone loves King Arthur. That's great. You don't really think any more about it because you think that's just for anime reasons. But when you start going into, like, all of that stuff that, what would have canonically happened to the King Arthur in the Fate universe, which, of course, you can kind of make up anything because King Arthur himself is legendary. He's not... he's mythical, rather. He's not a real king from history that we can say, and it's not like having Henry VIII or something, where you have a documented history and then you have to make a new canon. It's kind of like you can do what you want with him. You've got Merlin, you've got wizards, you've got all kinds of stuff. And no, it just sounds really good. You're getting me interested in watching some Fate.
Yeah, that part is fun. The problem was, because all those details, you get little pieces of them throughout Fate Stay Night and whatnot when Artoria does reveal bits of her past, but then a lot of it's also like Nasu, the writer, the main writer, would write these big material books, which I don't think is necessarily the best way to do it, but it would be just these big lore dumps in a book you'd buy that's separate from the main work, and he would put little details in there. And eventually, Artoria's backstory got put into an audio drama that was released standalone that put more details about her past. So you kind of have to like piece them together.
Yeah. I know, I think it's awesome. Would you mind... Oh, hang on. Ada. Thank you, Matthew McAfee. Honestly, it's best to pick a cool character design and then just watch that story. Also, great work to both of you. Thank you so much. Would you mind answering some people's questions about Fate that have been coming up? Because I need to very quickly just go and feed my cat because he's looking like he's about to pounce on me.
Oh, I
And
understand.
make some noise. So I just need to mute it for like a second.
Sure.
If you wouldn't mind answering some of their questions about fate while we do that.
Now that I'm looking, most of it's just your comments on it. Let's see here. If there's a legitimate question. Because you guys know what's up. Yep, Arthur prototypes a male. Robot Wars. Female Merlin, yeah. Kind of yokai, yeah. Denari is canon. Uta Saber, yep. Do I wish to convert? Oh, right. Yoda Kobe. Nero better than Artoria, you're right. And I did make an abridged version telling of the Saber story. Osama, yeah. Indeed, you put the O in front of things to make them more highly regarded. Oji Osama, indeed. Yes, Fate has multi-universe shenanigans. Okay, you asked this before. What is your opinion generalized from Moist Critical's response video? Yeah, I did make a video about Moist Critical. His take on some of the anime that feature like middle school kids or high school kids. And he was like, well, why do these kids, if you want them to be in sexual situations, why did you make them teenagers? And basically my whole thing to that is that it's obviously a major cultural difference that Japan does not see a... Usually it's like 16 is the equivalent of an 18-year-old. They don't see that as, oh, you're a child. Obviously, they might still call you a kid in some ways, but culturally they would expect you to be more responsible, I think, than we would typically expect. At least an American teenager. I can speak to my country. But, so in the case of that, it's like, it's not abnormal for them. And that's where that comes in. Abraham Lincoln. Does he use a sword, though? Who is fated to stay the night? Well, that depends, isn't it, on your plot route. You get to choose. All of it's about whether it's Saber, Rin, or Sakura. That's it. That's the whole point of Fate Stay Night. An axe. Giant eagle and fireworks. Yeah. What's your opinion of how everyone that uses a particular class card evokes a different version of that heroic spirit? Did they? You know what's kind of funny is after this video, I'm planning to write my lesson in Magecraft on class cards. So I better kind of like get your opinion on that.
I'm back. Sorry.
Does Miyu ever use the Archer card, for instance? Welcome back.
Thank you. Thank you for entertaining everybody. And you can carry on. I just wanted to let people know I was back.
The new Lost Belt starts off on, I think Thursday is when we're getting it. And I'll be streaming that. So, there you go. Would you recommend Fate Strange Fake? I can't recommend it because I have not read it. I know of it, but I have not actually sat down and read it myself.
Ada. Thank you, Yukito Online. Would you recommend it to me?
Yeah, Fate Strange Fake it's a manga. It was a manga spin-off that, again, is kind of like Apocrypha in that it's a whole other Grail War with its own rules and such.
I did watch that video Giguk did that kind of explained how everything branches off from everything else and what follows which timeline. And I think, honestly, some of the reason why I never got deeper into the Fate franchise after watching Fate Stay Night, because I watched that a few years ago now, and I really liked it, but I think it might even have been the fact that Giguk made it sound so confusing in some videos back then. that I was just like, oh, you know, it's almost a meme that Fate is confusing and there's so much of it that, you know, I didn't feel like I had time to get deep into the franchise. But you're making it sound a lot more accessible than those kind of jokes about it did. So
He plays up the jokes for sure. He's
Yeah.
made 2 videos. I remember one of them that was like making a joke about how, you know, it's like, oh, I understand that this character is Saber. It's a female King Arthur. But then what about this character? Oh, that's Nero. That's Red Saber. It's different. And I'm like, yeah, there was a bit of a history to that because they made a spin-off called Fate Extra, which is just basically Fate Stay Night in a computer simulation. That's basically what it is. And for that, they decided to create Nero the Emperor and make him a female. As if they were just always a female, and that version looks, especially in the original design, basically just like Saber wearing a red dress, and
but
that confused a lot of people. But the reason they did that is because Saber,
a totally different character anyway, because obviously
a totally different character, and now she looks quite a bit different too. I think the art style has changed over the time, but the original art, they were trying to do it because people think of Saber as like the coolest character ever, and so when they were trying to get people into Extra, they wanted to give a similar character design for people who would otherwise not be interested, because it's like, well, it doesn't have Saber, I don't care anymore. But
oh, and somebody, Dark Canister, is saying, and then you can't confuse Red Saber with Saber of Red.
Yep, and that's just Mordred.
Oh,
because in Mordred Apocrypha, they have 2 teams. There's a red team and a black team, basically. So the Saber on the red team is Mordred.
Who's the daughter of Saber.
Yep.
Of the King Arthur Saber, right? Mordred is the daughter of King Arthur by the Futa Arthur Saber and Guinevere, right?
Not of Guinevere. It was actually... It's an incest story because it's her wicked sister, Morgan, that births Mordred. So I don't know how much that carries into...
Merlin turns Arthur Saber temporarily into a Futa, and she impregnates her evil sister.
Not by choice, but yes. She was supposed to do it for Guinevere, so that's how it started. But then Wicked Morgan comes in and takes the seed, like, while she's sleeping or whatever. She enchants Merlin, because he's a womanizer, and he falls asleep, and then she goes and takes advantage of her own sister in the night, runs away, and then gives birth to Mordred, and raises her in secret to try and go and kill Arthur later down the line.
It's like a whole telenovela.
Yeah, I've made a funny little thing I do at conventions where I'd put on a little puppet show of this
that
for
would be
people.
Brilliant.
And I have it recorded. There's a video of that tells like the story of King Arthur and Gilgamesh. So that can be watched, but that's sort of me like making jokes about it because it does sound really absurd, but that's kind of what they ultimately went with.
Because I mean, I'd watched on your channel. I've mainly only watched the stuff that wasn't about Fate because I just assumed I wouldn't understand what you're on about. You know, like people come to my channel and maybe don't watch any of the ReZero stuff if they don't know about ReZero. I kind of felt like it was like that, you know, I was watching your commentary stuff and whatnot, but there was all that Fate content and I was like, this could be someone who could teach me the ways of Fate. And it's certainly sounding interesting, I've got to say.
Like, I have a Type Moon lore playlist, and right at the start is kind of my own equivalent of this is how I would get into the show myself. Kind of, it's similar to what Gigic did. I don't know which one came first.
Probably yours. I mean...
I remember when he came out with that video, and I'm like, he can say the same things I do, but get a million views. Part of me was like frustrated, but then I'm like, you know what? That's fine. That's going to get more people into Fate, hopefully. In your case, it seemed like it detracted you almost, but...
Well, in a way, there was a time a few weeks ago where I made a couple of videos, one of them about why isekai wasn't as generic as people were saying. And another one was an isekai tier list that I did. And the next week, Giguk did the two exact same things. Now, obviously, he wasn't copying me because I'm at best mid-tier. Nobody's heard of me.
Oh, absolutely.
But he wasn't copying me. We just had the same idea at the same time. But I was just like, well, now he's done it. Nobody's going to watch mine, you know?
I try to remain optimistic when that kind of thing happens. Be like, no, at the very least, maybe your video will show up underneath it.
Yeah. I just need to do thank you, Mindster Nez. He says, I'm truly enjoying this content. Good job. Random question. How do you think Fujimaru would fare as a Magus student in the clock tower? I'm guessing that's a fake question.
Yeah, no. Ritsuka Fujimaru is the main character in Grand Order. And kind of the joke is that they're not a very good mage, but they're literally the last humanity has left.
Okay.
So what would this character do if they actually got to study magecraft, like, properly? And I think they would be good because they turned out being good. They just didn't have any formal training. It's almost like they just found like a flyer being like, we're looking for mages, which I don't know how that works because it's like Harry Potter. You're supposed to keep magic a secret. So I don't know how they recruited Ritsuka in the first place.
Right, yeah,
because I really think about that.
Because in the one Fate anime I've seen, everything was just normal Japan apart from the Grail Wars going on. So I assumed it was kind of like Harry Potter, you know, there was the whole hidden society kind of thing.
Yeah, and that's why when Shiro watches two of the servants fighting, Lancer had to go and kill him right at the start. I don't know if you remember that specific detail.
No,
but
it was a good few years ago. I mean, if I try and get into it again, I'll probably start by rewatching Fate Stay Night. But
well, that's how Shiro got into all this. He was hanging out at the school cleaning the dojo when he accidentally ran into two servants fighting, and Lancer was ordered to keep it a secret. And so he kills Shiro, then Rin resurrects him, and then he goes back home. And then Lancer is like, what? He's still alive? And comes back to kill him again. And it's during that encounter that he summons Saber.
Isn't there also like a spin-off that's about like a cooking or a restaurant or something as well?
Yes. And it's kind of like how I said Fate Hollow Ataraxia is like the sequel to all three of those routes at the same time.
Yeah.
It's more or less kind of just a slice of life, like fun fan disc where you get to see like all the characters who were normally killing each other, just having fun.
Yeah.
And from that spawned kind of, and I don't know, if you read the original visual novel, there's a lot of cooking scenes. I guess Nasu is like really obsessed with Shiro and Rin and cooking their foods and stuff. So there's lots of screen time dedicated to that, which some people find really weird, but it kind of became its own little manga. And then it got an anime as well. And then they made a Cooking Mama style Switch game for it too. So Fate Cooking is a fun little don't think too hard about it kind of spin off. Yeah.
I can certainly see why something like that would get made as a game, but it's very strange when you're considering other fandoms, you know, you're like, oh, when will ReZero Season 3 come out? And we would really like some news about that or something. And then you've got like Fate where they'll just make a whole anime about a Cooking Mama based spin-off game or something. It's like, oh, come on.
Yeah, Type Moon is really weird with how they're releasing stuff. I guess they're kind of open to like letting other studios give their shot at adapting things, which is fair enough.
Yeah.
And some of it's a flop, some of it's good. Like they just had a bunch of movies based on the Fate Grand Order stuff made by two different studios, but they're covering different parts of Fate Grand Order, and stylistically they're very different looking films.
Are they? I mean, do you need to watch all of them though? Like
Fate Grand Order, you kind of do.
Okay.
Yeah. That's weird. They decided to with Fate Grand Order, there's a whole bunch. You're basically going, like each chapter is you going back in time to resolve an issue at a clear point in history. Like, what if Joan of Arc was able to be resurrected after she was burned at the stake and now she's pissed? You know, that kind of thing. So there's a scenario where you better fix that part of history. Uh-oh. and then you go further and further back, and some of those chapters are more beloved by fans than others. So when it came time to animate them, they just decided to do like the ones they thought were the coolest and not
Yeah.
animate all of them in order. So you can't watch the entirety of Fate Grand Order in animation, unfortunately.
Right. So I guess it's all kind of like standalone episodes of which they made into movies. So different events and
Well, they're all chronological, which is what makes it weird. So like they made Babylonia, which is the seventh like major chapter first. So if you were only watching anime and you started that, you'd have no idea what happened very much within the 6 chapters prior to that.
okay.
So yeah, Fate Grand Order is a little trickier because they want you to play the mobile game. But I have made summary videos about each and every one of those chapters, and a lot of people skip the cutscenes in the game because they're trying to play the mobile game like on the go. And some of these cutscenes can take like hours to read, a visual novel style. So they
Yeah.
just like watch my video instead. I'm like, oh, okay.
Because I never play mobile games, and so
It's the only one I do.
I mean, it's kind of like if I could just watch the cutscenes on a YouTube video or something, I'd probably just do that. But if that's not that's not normally something you can do with mobile games, so I'll probably just watch your summaries and that would be it.
That's if you really wanted to. Because like I said, Fate Grand Order is like the next step up. Like, you probably get way more out of the Stay Night stuff. It's
Yeah.
much more artistically done, I think.
I think, yeah, probably it makes sense to watch the Stay Night stuff, then Zero, and then Grand Order. But I really want to see Astolfo.
Well, yeah, you could start with Apocrypha right now, thankfully.
Yeah.
That you don't need a prerequisite for. And you'll get lots of Astolfo there.
I think I'll probably go back to Stay Night and watch the Unlimited Blade Works and what do you say the other one was?
Heaven's Feel.
Heaven's
But those are
Feel.
3 movies, and I don't know where you can stream them. I know you can download them.
I'll find
and
a
they're out
way.
on disc.
Don't worry about
Yeah.
that.
Normally, it seems like both Crunchyroll and Netflix both have like all of that stuff.
Right. I have
which is
both of
good.
those, but like there's often regional things that mean
Right,
that,
right.
you know, I can only watch them with Italian subtitles or something like that on Netflix.
That's true.
So sometimes, even though I pay for all the streaming services, I sometimes use other means.
Oh, of course. I had to do that with World's End Harem because
'Cause you didn't want
Crunchyroll
the
has the censored version.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's
There's
the
no point
point?
watching that show. There is no content to see
Yeah, that's
if
kind of
you
like
watch the censored.
it's like decaffeinated coffee. Like why does it exist? What's the need for it? You know, like who wants to watch censored World's End Harem or censored redo of Healer? It's like why even make that?
And even though I have Hulu, Crunchyroll, Netflix, originally Funimation would get their hands on certain things, and whatever they didn't feel like giving to Hulu or Crunchyroll, then I would just find other ways of watching because I didn't want to support Funimation. But now that Crunchyroll is becoming like it's absorbing Funimation now, that's gonna change things a little bit, I guess.
Yeah.
Because I was watching Mushoku Tensei on there because that's a Funimation product.
Yes, that was on Funimation. Now you can watch it on Crunchyroll. I watched it on 9anime, but you know,
Yeah, it's a little more work though because I like to just sit on my couch and if there's an app, just run it straight through there. But otherwise, I'll have to go and get it on file and watch it later, which takes a little more effort. When I'm really busy with multiple series, I'm like, oh yeah, that show, I forgot.
I
I
just
think I had to do that for
I just find
Vivi,
that
which
like the interface of Crunchyroll is actually worse than the interface for the dodgy sites. And it's like, well, I'm paying for Crunchyroll anyway. I bought all the Mushoku Tensei light novels. I'm giving them my money. I just kind of like, maybe I just want to watch it on a site where if I search for something they have, I can actually find it. Because I remember
Yes.
I was searching for something on Crunchyroll. I think it was like an OVA of Attack on Titan. It was something they definitely had anyway. And it was like they were bringing up nothing. I was like, oh, shut up. You know, why can't you just get some front-end developers to make this thing work properly? But still, I find it also, there's a lot of regional issues, and I can't be bothered to go through a VPN every time something's licensed to Crunchyroll, but only in North America, you know. It's just...
Right. Yeah, and I don't know what Crunchyroll looks like outside of North America. Like, US and Canada get the same stuff, but... Oh man, that's sad. Yeah, it's weird because of just licensing who they feel like paying, and like, but we're everywhere.
Yeah,
and a lot of people a lot of people can't even play Fate Grand Order. Ironically, despite the main character, or one of the most iconic, being freaking King Arthur, you can't play it in that region, even though the game's in English.
Really?
Yep. You have to do like the VPN equivalent of that, I guess, or like get a North American account to play it, just because of who pays the licensing for it.
Well, I live in Europe, so I'll definitely have to just watch your summaries, I guess.
Yeah, there's so it's sad. I'm like,
yeah,
that's another thing that I realized, is that just making a video that everyone can watch is like doing a service, even if you are just kind of like to some extent repeating things that the game already does, because not everyone can play it. I'm like, well, that sucks.
Yeah, it's really annoying. I mean, I found with because I got Crunchyroll when the final season of Attack on Titan was airing. It was going to be simulcast on there, and at the time I was making Attack on Titan anime content, which I stopped doing. I only really cover the manga after that, because you get some weirdos when you start talking about Attack on Titan, I've got to say. But I wanted to watch the episodes as early as I possibly could, so I got Crunchyroll, can simulcast them. Not in Italy though, so I had to go through a VPN, set it up so that I supposedly was in North America, then I could watch it. And what I realised a week later was that it actually goes up on the pirate sites earlier than the simulcast that they do. So I was like, well, I'm just paying for it to be slightly later and not available in my country. So
right, yeah, that's the other thing they'll do. So this comes like trickle drop it like a week or two after the fact.
Yeah. No, I mean, it was only like an hour or two later, but they're like,
that's not too bad.
Simulcast. You think that that's going to be like the earliest you can watch it. As soon as they finish subtitling it, it will be right after the Japanese release. But it was actually up on 9 Anime earlier than it was up on the simulcast, which...
With the fan subs?
Yeah, and the fan
That's
subs
crazy.
were like... I mean, it's Attack on Titan. Most of the dialogue is just taken from the manga anyway, so, it wouldn't take that long to subtitle it.
So getting a suggestion, why don't you tell Natalie about the video you did on authentic dubs? I use Kill la Kill's dub as an example. Oh, well, I mean, that's basically just what we were talking about, is localization versus translation, which gets some people all put up in a feather, I guess. But I
mean, I can believe that Kill la Kill has a good dub. There are certainly things out there that have good dubs, but it's like I still would rather just watch it in Japanese, which I did. And it's like, I've already watched it now, so why would I watch it again with a dub? It's kind of like, Sometimes
I've watched a show just to, because it got a dub, just to have an excuse to watch it again, but...
I can't do it. I really don't like the way that... This was what I was talking about in my video. Like, it doesn't sound neutral to me when things have, like, an American cartoon accent,
Right.
So it sounds like a kid's cartoon to me as soon as people are all like, which is the voice they do for all anime girls. It's like, I don't like it. And I think to people who are American, that sounds neutral. But to people who are British, it sounds very American. And it's like, well, why am I supposed to believe this Tokyo schoolgirl is now, sounds like a Powerpuff Girl or something? And
Right.
it
That's a good
feels
point.
like quite grating to me, even if the acting is good. And it's just like that's kind of part of the point I was saying in my video about subs and dubs. It's like there is a certain amount of neutrality that you get from hearing actors with a similar accent to you,
Hmm.
and to somebody who's American or Canadian and you're used to hearing North American accents, it's fine to say to you, this person in this medieval fantasy setting has an American accent because it sounds neutral. Whereas to me, it's like, but that's historically weird because there wouldn't be American people in the medieval fantasy setting, like kind of it
Yes,
becomes
that's always a
jarring.
really weird one too, because I think Funimation's dubs try to like work around that because sometimes what is it like? Code Geass has an OVA that I think takes place in France, and so
Yeah.
they have the characters, even though they're English voice actors, trying to do like French accents with it, and to me that doesn't work at all.
No,
Maybe if it were done, authentically
no, but
over
you see,
there, it might
like
sound better, but it
in
sounds really fake to me.
in I don't know, when things are made in Britain at least, usually if there's like a historical drama that's set in Europe, anywhere in Europe, they won't have French accents or whatever unless they're speaking in French and it's subtitled, because that's kind of weird. So they'll go with like what will be a neutral accent to the audience. And usually for like medieval stuff, they use British accents because obviously we kind of existed in that time period. So if you have something like Game of Thrones, nobody has an
Right.
American accent in there, even though it's not a historically accurate story, it's a fantasy setting. It still just seems kind of weird for like kings and queens and all that to not sound like they come from a country where kings and queens and stuff were a thing, It's like that's usually the way they approach it in Hollywood and things like that. Lord of the Rings and Game of Thrones and things like that usually use British voice actors, or Americans doing a British accent. But for anime,
Yep.
it's kind of like, nah, it doesn't matter, you know?
Hmm. And it's interesting because what is it? There's one video game series, Xenoblade Chronicles, that when it got localized had the exact opposite effect because originally it was only released in Europe, and American fans had to like I don't know, usually do like petitions and things trying to beg them to release it over here originally. And so when they did, they decided to use the dub that was produced there. And it's a really nice dub, but we're not used to that accent for all the characters in a JRPG, and it wound up actually being really really charming. Like people wound up loving it because of that. To the point where even though now they're localizing stuff, I think through Nintendo of America for the sequels, they still get actors from over there to do the voice because it's
Yeah.
been I don't know, we expect it now and it's part of the character. Even though this is all just your typical Japanese RPG that would have otherwise gotten American washed, I suppose.
Yeah, and I think it's just because they use the same bunch of people for all the dubs. Whereas, like, if you think of any American made, like, video games or whatever, they get, voice actors that suit the roles particularly and can do whatever
Mm,
accent they envisage for that character. And they put some thought into all of that. Whereas I think with most anime dubs, it's just like whoever can do a lolly voice will play the lolly. Whoever can do the shonen boy voice does the shonen boy. It's like always the
mm.
same few people doing the same very cartoonish sounding voices. And I mean, it's fine for the people who like that, but for me it's just like, why would I bother to watch that when I can just read subtitles and watch the Japanese? So I never watch them, and I find it very strange whenever there's like drama about some American voice actor and people ask me what I think about it. And I'm like, I don't know who that is and I don't care. They've got like nothing to do with the industry as far as I'm concerned, Unless it's a very big drama that actually has an impact on the community, like the Vic Mignogna stuff. I'm just kind of like, I don't know who that is. They're not famous to me, you know. I don't know who
Yeah,
they
absolutely.
are.
Yeah, it's really weird because yeah, certain studios like I'm familiar with the different places in America where they tend to do the recording. So if I figure out that there's one actor, I can expect to hear other actors because I know they all live in California versus Texas
Yeah.
versus New York are the three main areas, and they each have their own little acting troops, as it were. But yeah, the more I listen to Japanese voice acting, the more I'm starting to pick out, all the famous voices in that too. So I'm
Yeah.
like, to some extent, they do have their own little, well, or they do cast based on, the popularity of certain VAs for sure.
Yeah, but it's just like, to me, the level of talent that you get from the Japanese seiyuu is really impressive. You know, so the range of some of them, the different
Hmm.
characters they can play. I mean, I just think it's a more professional aspect of media in Japan than dubbing anime is ever going to be, in America. You can get better voice actors for things like Pixar movies, or American produced things like Arcane has really good voice actors. Games, tend to have completely different voice actors to the people you get in the anime dubs. And it's almost like, I don't know, I feel like, are they any more relevant to the industry or famous than, say, the people who do the voices on Sword Art Online Abridged? I kind of think that,
Yeah.
you know, it's
Though
not
it is
like,
kind of, yeah. A lot of the anime voice actors that I hear when it comes to a AAA video game, they wind up playing the side characters, like the generic thugs that you shoot at and stuff like that. And I've heard them
yeah.
before, like, "Oh, you voice acted my anime. Now you're just this random guy I get to shoot." So that's probably how they perceive it. I like think that there's a lot of good talent in there, but yeah, the industry itself isn't built around getting the quality of the dub.
Because
It's not built around that first and foremost, like it would be in Japan.
what's
Like,
interesting is that other countries have, like in Italy, there's a very strong dubbing industry because historically, they've bought in shows more than they've produced themselves. So being able to dub American or British shows was always a thing. And there's a lot of places you can train to do that. It's kind of an area of media in itself. Whereas in the US, dubbing is not really a thing that's been traditionally done. Same as in the UK. We'd buy in American shows or make our own rather than buy in, say, French shows and dub them in English. Usually when foreign stuff is popular in the UK, it's with subtitles. It's not usually dubbed. So we don't have that kind of industry of training people and raising them up to be, dubbing voice actors, which is slightly different from normal voice acting anyway, because you have to time it with something that already exists, and it's generally different. So I've heard that Italian dubs and some Latin American dubs are actually better than the North American ones, just because there's more professionalism and skill around the whole concept of dubbing in countries that historically have always bought in shows that were originally in English. So they have no trouble doing that with Japanese either.
that's fascinating. Yeah, I never thought of that. And it's hard to compare. I guess maybe if you're bilingual and you have a working understanding of what each language, sounds good at, like what counts as good acting in
Yeah.
each language is always tricky because it's like with anime, it sounds really good to us, but we don't necessarily know what good acting is versus bad acting in like I guess like a corny or melodramatic sense.
Yeah.
Um,
Like it would be hard for me to know exactly what they're saying in Japanese, but for a lot of my friends who are Italian and speak English as well, they kind of tell me that the Italian voice acting in dubs is actually not just of anime but of movies and all sorts of stuff, is actually really considered to be among the best kind of dubbing in the world. And you can hear it when you watch certain things. You can even tell that the range of the actors is a bit more impressive. There's, it just feels less cringe. You know, there's just
Gotcha. Yeah.
that.
Well, as far as like kind of the cringe thing goes, it's interesting because in the U.S., Studio Ghibli films are all dubbed by Disney now.
Yeah,
Um,
and I mean, you get like A-list actors. You can watch. I mean, I have watched the English dub of Howl's Moving Castle because my parents wanted to watch it, and put it on with them, and that's got like Christian Bale and people like that in it. You know, you're not going to get that for a dub of, I don't know, Uzaki-chan Wants to Hang Out or something, are you? I mean,
yes, but at the same time, some people, have complained, and I've felt this sometimes that the AAA actors aren't used to dubbing
yeah,
either. So you get kind of, it might be maybe like a decent performance if it were done like as an original studio recording, but as a dub, it doesn't quite fit. It's sort of like a weird thing. So the idea of having an industry built around dubbing
yeah,
specifically for that, it makes a lot of sense. But unfortunately, there's like, as far as like labor disputes and things in America too, because there's unionized acting versus non-unionized. And so as a result, for instance, the character King Arthur, Saber, has been played by 3 different voice actors,
right.
switching off pretty often, actually. Whereas it's always been the same person in Japan straight throughout, and they wouldn't even dare to cast anyone else.
Yeah. I mean, I must admit, I really love finding out more about the Japanese voice actors, though. Like, I get really excited when I recognize someone's voice, and I'm like, I think that's the same person that played, some other character. And then I look up all the different roles they've done, and I get all like, oh my God, he's got the same voice as this other character. And there's some voice actors you just get that have played some really surprising roles.
Yeah.
This is one a lot of people probably know if they're ReZero fans. The guy that plays Petaljuice in season 1 of ReZero is also the voice of Kirito in Sword Art Online.
Right. Yeah, that totally. I remember that.
And Belle from Danmachi. So usually he plays these like heroic characters, and then he's the insane Sin Archbishop in ReZero as well.
Which, yeah, that's very fun. One I like is Maya Sakamoto. She's been around for a long time, and she does tons of voices.
She did. Did she do Jolene Cujo in one of the JoJo's games, or am I thinking of someone else?
Don't think it was her. Yeah, she doesn't have like, because I recently watched a bit of that, and I don't think that was her.
Okay.
She tends to have a more of a graceful voice,
No,
softer than.
Not in the anime. I think in the games. She
Oh, it would be specifically different in the games.
Yeah,
huh? Well, then maybe I don't know.
It was actually a different voice actress that played Jolene in the games versus the anime, but I could be wrong. I think that's just for some reason that's what I thought that Maya Sakamoto had played, but I could be wrong.
Oh, they're saying that Kirito's voice was also the sword hero, and they did that on purpose because they're making a reference, which is funny.
Yeah, Rudius in Mushoku Tensei has the same voice actress because he's a child, he's played by a woman, as Puck from ReZero.
I never realized that.
Yeah.
I probably will now, though. Maybe because after hearing Rudius so much, going back to hearing Puck, because he hasn't shown up as often in the more recent season.
Oh, Jolene in the games is voiced by Miyuki Sawashiro, basically Mordred, says Kodakazu.
Ah, see, that sounds appropriate. Yeah, Mordred's the rough, tomboyish.
I don't know why I thought she was Maya Sakamoto, but my brain just got the names mixed up.
A lot of times that'll happen.
Yeah, but
one that I find funny is, I don't know, have you seen Steins Gate?
Yeah, love Steins
Okay, you know
Gate.
Daru, right?
Yeah.
He has the same voice as Gilgamesh. So it's like, big, evil, egotistical, pompous, bad guy, being swapped out for, geeky computer guy who's like talking like this all the time. He's very dopey.
Oh.
And so, yeah, that was a fun one the contrast.
There's just some when you think, wow, how is that the same person? That's like then you're impressed by the range. But then there's some where you're just impressed by the talent. I got to say, like Aoyuki, who was the main character in So I'm a Spider, So What, and also in Saga of Tanya the Evil. Just like her performances are so like energetic and compelling,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would know her from Tanya for sure.
Yeah, it's really good. And I mean, like, for So I'm a Spider, So What, half the show is just her talking to herself. It could easily have been boring, but she just sells it, just... Just Chick says, Dio is the clown from ReZero. Oh, yeah. I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but the voice actor that plays Dio Brando in JoJo's Bizarre Adventure is also Roswell in ReZero. He's also in just about everything. He's that like pig guy in Demon Slayer. I don't really watch Demon Slayer, so I don't know what guy's name is. He's...
Oh, that's him?
Yeah.
Wait, what? Are you kidding me? Let me look that up.
He's also Benno, the merchant in Ascendance of a Bookworm, I found the other day.
He's Ozymandias in Fate Grand Order, the Egyptian pharaoh.
Of course he was in
And he's kind of the same character there, where he just won't shut up.
He's in everything, and it's great that he's in everything, because he's awesome. But, like... Ada, thank you, Succubus Sakura. Loving the collab, thank you both for your anime expertise. Wow. Thank you, Daikun, for your anime expertise.
Oh, Master Chief in Halo Infinite is Kiritsugu's voice. That's cool. That's a very appropriate voice. He's a very deep, sort of solemn dude, so it makes sense.
Ada, thank you, God Howard, for that piece of trivia as well as for the super chat, because that's actually really interesting. Dio is also Zeke, right? Yes, he's also Zeke Yeager in Attack on Titan.
Right, yep.
And Roswell and Dio and all those other people I said. He's in everything. Everything.
Roswell's the funniest though, because listening to him is always funny.
Yeah. Well,
I never know which syllable he's going to stretch or do that inflection with.
Because sometimes I do readings from light novels and stuff, and there was a time when I read out a scene that was cut from the ReZero anime. That was the it wasn't cut, sorry, it was changed between the web novel and the light novel, and it's the scene when Subaru makes the bet with Roswell, and I read out how it was in the web novel. That video has since been deleted because of Kadokawa copyright issues. But basically I was just reading this out, and I had to do Roswell's lines, like trying to think of how to, how to do Roswell's lines.
Yeah, which makes me wonder, did they, I think they dubbed ReZero. I'm wondering what they did with his voice. Sometimes I'm just curious, like, how the hell are they going to adapt that? And I go to check just to see how they did it, but...
Yeah, actually, anyone in the chat who's seen the dub of ReZero, because I haven't, what did they do with Roswell's voice? Does he still... Because in the books he does, it's actually written that way. He does speak that way, even in the books. So I think they couldn't really not do it. Because it does actually have a significance in the plot too. Because Roswell didn't talk like that when he was the original Roswell. And Hector did talk like that.
I'm not exactly sure what that means.
Have you seen season 2?
I have. I may have forgotten this little piece.
When,
I know his backstory, but I don't know what that
when
voice inflection was.
When they show that bit of backstory where Echidna gets attacked by Hector, the demon of melancholy or whatever they called him in the subs, and he's like attacking Echidna and everything in the past, and that's when she gets Ryuzu to set up the barrier and everything. In that flashback, you see this character Hector, and he kind of dresses like a jester, and he talks with that kind of cadence that Roswell later starts to talk with. And so there's a lot of theories around how those two characters are connected. because Roswell started to dress like a clown and talk in a similar way to Hector.
Okay, so
Who
that
was his
voice is supposed
enemy. So there is
clown.
something about the way that those voices are written, when they're written literally as words in the books, that is supposed to be put across. And so I think in the dub they would have to kind of do it. In the dub he elongates his vowels, same as in the Japanese as super pancake. So yeah, they did actually have to keep that in.
That's cool. Yeah. So it looks like, from what I hear, they did a good job, which is good to hear. Like, I never want to hear about it. So yeah, you were saying obviously Inosuke, the boar-headed guy from Demon Slayer, is Kirito and Bell and all those others. I forgot who I thought you had said he was, but someone who was different than that. But
yeah, no, sorry, I might have accidentally sounded like I said it was the same voice actor as Roswell and Dio, whereas it actually was the same actor.
Right, that's
Kirito,
what got me.
that we were talking
really?
about just before. Yeah, that was me just not being clear because I'm drinking a lot of Monster Energy drink and I don't know what I'm talking about anymore. Ada, thank you, the Jaded Warlock. If you want voice acting range, look up Haruka. Sorry. If you want voice acting range, look up Haruka Tomatsu. I can't think who that is right now. And Ada, thank you, Urazoe, for pointing out, yes, that Inosuke, the pig guy from Demon Slayer, is the same voice actor as Kirito and not Roswell. Yeah. I don't really know how we got onto voice actors, but it's super interesting. I love them.
Haruka plays Asuna, Morgiana from Magi, Anaru from Anohana.
Right.
Yeah. I can't remember the actual sound. She played.
I don't know any of those characters. I haven't seen those things.
And Zero too from Darling.
Oh right, okay. Yeah, that's a more memorable voice.
Which sounds like the biggest contrast between them. But...
Yeah, I can't really remember Asuna's voice specifically. But
Kirito-kun, I just remember that much.
Yeah. What I think
she's a very sweet sounding voice for that.
What I think is quite cool though is that Alice in Sword Art Online Alicization has the same voice as Darkness from Konosuba.
Oh, I love that.
So she's basically like if Darkness was played straight, you get Alice, right. Even though she kind of looks like Saber, but it's like, yeah, if you played it straight and had that like paladin type character and she wasn't like dodgy like Darkness, she would sound the same.
Mm-hmm.
It was kind of cool.
But yeah, we don't have to stay on the voice acting thing necessarily.
Let's see, what else are people saying?
Abridged voice actors? Oh.
I don't really have anything specifically to say about them, except for I was really surprised that the guy that plays Kirito in Sword Art Online Abridged, that's his real voice. I've seen him in some other videos, and that's just how he talks. It's not like a voice he
it's
created
a very
for the
interesting
character.
voice.
It's cool, but it's like I thought that was a character that he'd created that voice for. But no, that's his real voice. That's awesome.
Mm-hmm. They also have an Unlimited Blade Works abridged, that same group, and he plays Shiro, and
okay,
it's the same exact voice, so it must be very natural.
Well, some people, I mean, like I do a bit of voice acting on the side, and I just use my normal voice normally. Normally, that's what people want, though. Thoughts on Fate Grand Order? I haven't seen it. That's why I was asking my lovely guest Daikun to tell me how to get into Fate, because I haven't seen Fate Grand Order. I've only seen Fate Stay Night, and we were talking about that earlier. So
yeah, Fate can be a very, what do I call it, like it's like a black hole. It'll suck you in kind of because as much as I want to, because I didn't start off doing Fate stuff. It was actually just the very first video that really broke the algorithm was a lore on Gilgamesh. And so it went from like me getting like a couple hundred views every now and then to suddenly that one spiking to, couple 100,000. I'm like, holy crap. And
Yeah.
so I kind of had no choice but to go with that. But I've also been sort of like typecast as like the fake guy. So I'm like, I want to talk about all anime, but it's really hard to when I make a video that's not Fate or I don't put Mordred like
Yeah.
on the cover and like nobody looks at it as much. I'm like,
It's really weird because you can never predict which videos are gonna do well. You know, it's not usually the ones that you think, oh, that was my best one, or even that's the most popular topic right now, so this should do well. It's usually just something completely random. Like, for me, the video, other than the Neuralities one, which kind of blew up, the video on my channel with the highest number of views, for some reason, is one about Zenith from Mushoku Tensei, like what happens to her later in the story. And you would just think, like, of all the videos I made about Mushoku Tensei, you would have thought, really, Zenith? That's the most popular one? By a large margin as well.
and then you look back over the metadata. It's like, did I use a certain keyword that really liked it?
Yeah, it's just like, why did that one get picked up so much? You know, there's nothing particularly, you know, she's not like the most popular character in the show. It's not longer than my other videos or anything like that. And that was the one that for some reason got the most views. And then you kind of think, well, maybe I need to make more videos that are similar to that one. But how many videos can I make about Zenith from Mushoku Tensei? You know,
Right, it's not the specific one.
I said everything that there could be to say about her really in that one. So
And timing is an interesting part of it too, because I've remade that Gilgamesh video when I had more information, and that remade video that's in my opinion superior doesn't have the same viewership as the old one.
yeah.
And I've tried to like do the trend chasing videos where I'm like, ooh, this is a popular topic, I'm gonna make that. So unless you're like constantly doing just like the most popular stuff all the time, the algorithm doesn't recognize you as somebody that
I mean,
they want to do for that.
You can't really suddenly go, right, I'm gonna, because I started out covering ReZero, and then I was like, well, I want to sort of add some more shows because I don't really want to just be a ReZero channel. It just happened that was the thing I had a lot to talk about with, and you know, there are other channels that only cover ReZero, so I was kind of like, well, I'll just stay in that niche for now, get some subscribers, and I'll try and branch out into other things. And then I made the Neuralities video, and I got a lot of people who kind of wanted me to keep doing commentary type stuff or essays or whatever. So I started doing those from time to time, just when I felt like there was a topic I had things to say about, not just going through Twitter every day going, what are people angry about today, you know, but, you know, just whenever I felt like I had something to say, I would make those kind of videos as well. And I love making those, but it does mean that I sort of have a very mixed kind of audience, because some people want to watch, you know, the very lore-focused, factual, or, you know, at least informative sort of videos about what happens in the light novels of these different series and things. And other people just sort of want to watch the more community sort of related things with a bit of drama or whatever. And I've kind of I need to make sure I make enough of each type to keep everybody happy, kind of thing. And I guess you're kind of similar in the sense that you make those very in-depth Fate videos, but you also make the more sort of opinion piece and essay type videos as well. So, you know,
I also like doing more lore for just other anime stuff. So like, thankfully, those have actually gotten really popular. My Sailor Moon videos, well after I uploaded them, hit a soft spot in the algorithm and rose really well. And I'm like, yes, I don't know why. Then that also caught the attention of Toei, and so I was in a copyright battle with them 2 times across like 2 years, just trying to keep those videos up.
Toei are notorious for that. I mean, I don't think I've ever made anything about any Toei properties, but I think even our good friend Neuralities actually got copyright strike for a video about Sailor Moon, and her video was kind of like a fan fiction of Sailor Moon. It wasn't even using anything from Sailor Moon. And, you know, I'm not her biggest fan. We all know that. But I was still like, why did they take that down though?
No, we
There
can
was
all
like
agree that
nothing
they
in
should be
there.
allowed to make those videos.
Oh, of
Yeah.
course, yeah. She should be able to make, well, whatever. But she should also expect me to make videos saying why she's wrong. But
Well, of course. But yeah, no, it was weird. The only Sailor Moon video that didn't get flagged was Sailor Stars, because that's what they called the last season of the
yeah.
old anime. And so it just seems to me like there is somebody at Toei just typing in those words verbatim and just like purging everything that has the name, regardless of whether it's fair use or not. And just because Japan doesn't care about fair use.
Yeah, yeah.
That's the biggest fear. I'm like, I don't know if I'll ever become like the guy that you made a video on recently.
Totally not Mark.
The other one who actually got the
Suede.
slap suit.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Suede. I mean, like, I've never run into issues with Toei, like I said, but there were a lot of issues with Kadokawa last year, not just for me, but for everyone who was making anything about ReZero for some reason. It was very strange because Kadokawa owned just about everything, but
Right.
nobody was getting strikes for anything other than ReZero. But it was always, even if some of the videos they were only using stills, none of us were using any audio from ReZero. It was all just short clips in commentary and analysis type videos, reviews, meme type things. There was no just using it out of laziness, just reposting a clip or anything like that. It was all those kind of videos, and everybody was getting strikes like
Yeah,
regularly.
I still see lots of those like clip videos though, like just funniest
strangely.
tsundere moments that have like millions of views. I'm like, how do you survive?
Yeah.
Like I've tried, like especially when they have the original audio. I think I put like some No Game No Life audio once, and I had to do an experiment on that one because it was specifically for the music.
Yeah.
Like music that I really liked, and I was only allowed to use like 2 seconds of it before it picked it up and immediately blocked it. I'm like, whoa, that's not much at all. It's very automatic.
Because I've kind of wanted to make videos about the music in anime before, because I think that's an interesting subject, but then I'm like, well, I can't play any of it in the video, so that's going to be a crap video. It's like trying to describe, some music. It's like...
Yeah, that was like a $50 patron kind of thing, so it's like I felt obligated to try and make it work,
Yeah.
but that one, it's like they won't let me do it. So the most I could tell them is like, go listen to the track yourself. So there's got to be somewhere where you can, but...
Yeah, it's like I don't think I can even get away with like humming it myself or something, because you can get picked up even for like a cover of something. So
Oh, right. I had somebody try to copyright flag me over a wind sound, like wind sound effect.
really, oh god.
Yeah, it wasn't even my wind. Like I didn't put it there as part of editing. It was, I think it was an idle part of the Fate Stay Night visual novel. I think I had to like go up to the bathroom or something, and it was just playing like this, like in the background, and then they flagged it, and I'm like, okay, what is the content match? And it turned out to be like some other song that happens to have like a wind ambiance part of its song. I'm like, you can't do that.
No.
let's
Can't copyright something that vaguely sounds like wind. Shut up.
you can copyright sounds, but
Yeah,
in this
but-
case they weren't doing it. It's like they both used that sound, which
Yeah.
means that someone else probably had the copyright to that sound. But even then it's like, well, go complain to Type Moon, because I was just playing their game.
Yeah. Yeah,
But
sometimes,
yeah, that's
that, like, have you ever played Higurashi?
I want to. I've watched all of the different animes of it, and I'm really deep into the lore, and I watch a lot of videos of people talking about it.
Well, this won't be a spoiler or anything, but when you play Higurashi, there's a lot is in the audio, and particularly the sound of the Higurashi themselves, the cicadas. And that cicada sound effect is just what it sounds like where I live in the summer. Those things are deafening. Like people say they chirp or whatever. Here they bloody roar, I tell you. It's
Right,
it drives you insane, actually. I have to go out with noise-cancelling headphones after a few weeks of it, because it starts to literally drive you mad. And so when I'm playing Higurashi and there's that sound effect, I'm like, this just sounds like life in the summer. But then when I'm watching other shows that use that sound effect, like Nagatoro, for instance, uses the same, I think, sound effect in scenes of them in the summer. It's like, oh no, flashbacks to Higurashi whenever I hear that.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah, that's a good point.
so
yeah,
I
there's
kind
a
of
lot of
wonder if
anime
you
that use that.
if you can just freely use the sound of like cicadas, or if I use that, will I be like copyright strike for using the sound effect that was used in Higurashi or Nagatoro or literally any anime where they go outside in the summer, you know?
I mean, it's really hard to prove that. I mean, because if you could prove that you recorded that sound, if it ever went that far, obviously YouTube doesn't have the protection to help you
No.
defend yourself on that tier. But if it ever went to court, you could prove, yeah, I actually recorded this sound file, and it just happens to sound identical because every time I hear cicadas roar, it's always the same.
Yeah.
Like,
But maybe, I mean, even if I didn't record it myself, I just use
but there are,
a stock
some certain
sound. It's like,
stereotypical sound effects
yeah.
that you hear all the time that it's like, oh, I remember that specific recording of a camel or something. Like,
Yeah.
there's certain ones that they find their way through video games and things that get common in like sound effect packs, I guess.
Yeah. What I really like is when you have, instead of using sound effects of animals, like the normal kind of thing of animal sound effects, they get a voice actor to like make a cow noise or a sheep noise. I think it was like last year there was like, I've been killing slimes for 300 years and maxed out my level. There's like a bit in that where they just show some animals and they've got someone to make like goat noises and stuff, and it's like, okay.
Well, I'm pretty sure that, yeah, they're doing that just to be funny at that
Yeah.
point, which is good.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's great because you see it and you're just like, that's great. I want someone to pay me to make animal noises. Ada, thank you, Detractos. He says, years ago, Mexico planned to publicly stream the end of Dragon Ball Super, and Toei and even the Japanese government sent a letter, but Mexico ignored it. That's awesome. So they got to watch Dragon Ball Super anyway, and Toei can just shut up.
Mm-hmm. New sequel? Oh, When Cicadas Roar.
When the cicadas roar, yeah.
That would be funny.
Yeah, instead of when they cry, they can roar.
And now they're pissed because it's gone on a little long.
Yeah.
Now that they're fighting each other like shonen style over a shard of sword, right?
Maybe when they roar, it's just like when things get dialed up to 11, and it all becomes like some Gurren Lagann thing where they're like throwing galaxies at each other or something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I assume you saw the newest season of that, right?
No, because I haven't finished playing the visual novels, and so I haven't actually watched the anime.
Okay, yeah, because okay, I won't mention it then. It gets
It's
they
okay,
kind of do that. They kind of do dial it up to like 100, and you're like, wait, this doesn't feel like anything I've seen from this series before.
I don't really mind spoilers, but there probably are people who don't want to hear them, so
Mm-hmm.
I'm
No,
kind of
that's
like,
fine.
I'm one of those people that seeks out spoilers. I'm actually terrible. I'm always like, when somebody I know has read ahead of something that I'm interested in, I always want them to spoil me because that makes me more hyped to like read it or play it myself. I don't know why I'm like that. It's just like, no, tell me all the awesome stuff that's going to make me want to read it. Like you told me some stuff about Fate, and now I'm like way more hyped than I would have been if it was just like, oh, that character I've seen in some memes looks
Yeah, I
cool,
agree.
Like I want to see that stuff now. And
Like I saw the ending of Final Fantasy VII was the very first thing I saw was the final boss, and that made me want to play it. So
yeah, but
I usually don't get deterred. If a story is good, I don't think it should hinge upon just a spoiler, though it can be fun.
oh, Ada, thank you, God Howard. And I think he has a message for you there.
Oh yeah, definitely. Well, I know who this is. I can give you an Ada Ada or Ada. But no, yeah, I mean, maybe I can unban you if you, yeah. No, God Howard was this person that has been like taking random videos of mine and giving them to another streamer to react to, but I don't understand why.
Oh.
Like, it was just kind of weird. So I'm like, could you like not? But
Oh, right. So it was just kind of something that didn't really make sense rather than who did
it was
anything
kind of
like.
like showing it to somebody who like, I don't know, seems like this like really political like right winging guy. This Griffin Gaming or whatever has nothing to do with my stuff, but would like watch it and kind of make fun of it. I don't even know what it was, but it was just weird. But
Ah,
yeah,
okay.
no,
Yeah, if you're saying
I
he's
can,
not gonna give it to Griffin anymore, so I don't know. Not my
mm,
business, but thank you anyway for the super
yeah, no,
chat and Dice responded to you there.
yeah, definitely the Higurashi stuff becomes really divisive because it stops being like this really nice niche kind of emotional horror story and it goes into a
I know there's all
loud and ridiculous
I know
like
there's all kind of like I don't know actually if I can even say that without being a massive spoiler, but I know the main thing that's going on there that would I can say it, I suppose, the time looping and that stuff.
mhm, yeah.
I suppose it could be vague and be like the horror from Madoka Magica stuff, like.
I feel like Higurashi's been out long enough that stuff like Hinamizawa syndrome and the time looping is part of
I don't
the
know though,
understanding by this point, but
given that there was, the Higurashi Go anime was kind of trying to bring in a new audience and didn't reveal that that was part of it straight away. It's kind of like maybe there is an audience that would consider that a spoiler. I don't know. But, well, it's just impossible to talk about it without saying that that's a thing. It's not like
at least when the entirety of the second season and
Yeah,
everything from that point has to
yeah.
acknowledge it.
It's kind of like
But
talking about
I don't
ReZero
know.
without
They
saying
bring
that
up
there's time loops in
Rika
it.
being in that other dimension, like on episode 2 of the newer season.
Yeah.
So it's kind of spoiled, like right from there. Even if they are trying to
Yeah, they
grab
kind of
new
hint at
people,
it, but they try and make it more like mysterious. Like it's
it's a
not.
sequel disguised as a reboot.
Yeah,
And
I
they do that a
remember.
lot these days.
I remember watching
With
it before I started playing it. I was kind of like, oh, this is a reboot, so I haven't seen the original anime. I haven't played the visual novels. I'll give this a try. And I sort of watched the first couple of episodes, and then people were saying, oh, this is different actually. So it's a new story, not a reboot.
yeah, it's meant to screw with your head
And so
because you're supposed to know how it goes already.
so I stopped watching it, thinking I'll come back to it when I've played the visual novels because I wanted to play them.
Yeah,
And I just haven't finished doing that
is
yet.
yeah. Yeah, someone's asking. Umineko is tied to Higurashi,
It's
like a lot more officially now. It's done by the same creator, but then they went ahead and put certain characters and connections in that imply it's all part of the same like larger universe.
Yeah, I haven't played Umineko, but as far as I know, originally it was just kind of like, well, they're kind of in the same universe, but there's no kind of overlap in the canon or anything. But it
Yeah.
seems like later on they did introduce
Now
some
there are
things
some
that,
common characters
yeah,
that
so
like literally connect.
they are connected. Ada, thank you again, God Howard. He says, now he's a gaming YouTuber who responds to mainly bad gaming takes from fanboys and has a very similar style to Leafy, and on stream he watches anything. I guess
But
he's
what does
trying
that
to
mean?
explain what Griffin is doing. And
Yeah,
why he
but that
was...
implies you're saying that my takes are bad and that you want somebody to make fun of them. I don't know. It was just kind of weird.
I mean, I guess that kind of like what you were saying is that you banned him for passing your videos over because you didn't really know why or whatever.
Well, fair enough.
And if you're not doing that anymore, then you said that you don't really have any problem. It's just something that you didn't like. So if you don't do it anymore, then
Well, the only comments I got from God Howard before is like, "Oh my God, this is cringe" or something. I'm gonna go give it to Griffin Gaming or whatever, and like, that's all your comments are gonna be.
Right.
But yeah, I hardly ever ban people. I think like on Twitter, I have literally not unfollowed. No, I've never blocked anyone on Twitter, yet apparently I've got like 500 people blocking me.
Really? I've never blocked anyone, but I don't actually know how I find out how many people are blocking me.
There was like a third party app that I don't know
Yeah,
if I fully trust
I know
because it like
those.
you have to give it trust to like analyze your account, and it was like clean 500. I'm like,
I mean,
I don't know.
I've used those kind of third party apps just to kind of like delete dead accounts that I was following and things like that.
Hmm.
But I never really checked who had blocked me, and it's a long time since I've checked on one. But I would imagine I've probably at this point been blocked by certain people for.
It doesn't take much. Well, it depends because some people also like what is it like mass block people because they find out you're associated with so and so
Exactly.
when they block them, they have the ability to chain block everybody who's connected.
I do know.
So I don't know how many times.
I do know some people who have blocked me in particular. It was quite baffling. Some other people from the like ReZero community. There was a phase of like blocking me and JakeZ123 for reasons that we did not understand because we never even heard of these people. It was very weird. But other than them, I'm not aware of anybody who's like blocked me for who I am. Like maybe some people have blocked me for talking about certain things or but I always think it's really weird, like if I don't know who you are, why do you need to block me? You know? Like what am I going to do that's going to offend you? Just don't follow me.
Hmm. The only few people I do know, because you were saying you don't get into that voice actor drama and stuff, but you do know the Vic Mignogna incident.
Yeah, because
And
people ask me about it all the time because
oh
I'm
yeah,
I'm always on Twitter and you know it's one of those things people talk about a lot.
and some of the voice actors that were part of that, because I did grow up watching dubs, and I know a lot of those voice actors, and sometimes it was really hard to hear people on both sides, like literally like Air. I don't know if you've seen that, like Key, the visual novel makers.
Mm-hmm.
They do Clannad and Kanon and Air and
Yeah.
Little Busters and stuff. Yeah. Well, in that show, like Vic plays opposite of Monica Royale, which is one of the women who is bringing him out on those
Yeah.
accusations. And just as it's going through, I feel like I don't know. I honestly don't think I ever said anything that should be considered like worth blocking, but it's just sort of like asking for details about what happened or talking about that situation from a perspective that's not just, oh my God, that's so horrible, I believe you immediately kind of thing, which I didn't feel comfortable doing because I didn't understand the situation and what the real truth of this all was. And I think people hate the idea that you could be a skeptic, I guess, and like not know what really happened between these two people who claim different things.
Yeah, I mean,
And
I think like I don't even know enough about who they are to have a strong opinion about who would be more likely to lie based on their public persona or anything like that. I, like you, think that we can treat it with some skepticism and not automatically believe that he did these things just because the person that says he did is a woman or any of that. But I also wouldn't want to say, well, she's definitely lying because I don't know enough about it. And
you couldn't possibly.
Yeah, but I don't even know enough about either of them to have kind of a strong opinion about who I'd be more likely to believe. But there are a lot of people who would like me to be on the kind of supporting Vic side of it because typically I tend to be against the more, I tend to sort of be more aligned with the people that are against censorship or against, and I think they tend to be the same people, so they want you to be on their side, but it's also like, I just don't want to have an opinion on this. These people aren't people I know anything about. They're not part of what I consider to be the anime industry even,
Right.
It's just kind of like asking me what I think about the Kardashians or something. I just don't have an opinion on them. I just don't. But people want to know your stance on it because that kind of defines what side of things you're on in the community as a whole. To some people, it's like they connect what you think about one thing with other things. It's like maybe because I criticized the Dragon Maid dub, I should therefore not believe anything Jamie Markey ever says, or something like that. It's kind of
Right.
what, and I'm just like, I don't care, though. I don't care what she says. I don't know who she is.
I mean, I can definitely say that I don't like Jamie Markey, but that doesn't mean I think she wasn't telling the truth.
Yeah.
But she handled that situation very toxically.
It was very
it's
weird
kind of
that
one of
they
those things
did that,
like
they did that like podcast and stuff, and it did seem like they were trying to sort of cash in on it. And I was like, well, if they were telling the truth, I don't know, if it was me, that's not how I'd handle it. But
well, the podcast, I guess maybe I can understand because it's been a couple of years after the fact.
Yeah.
And it's a free podcast, and they've only done one of them so far, and they're kind of trying to tell their own side of the story, I guess. But
it's not very classy, though. That's kind
during
of
the whole thing, she was very aggressive towards people, just anyone, assuming that everything that came to her was some form of harassment and swearing at people and getting aggressive. And Amanda Wynn Lee is another just random voice actor who decided to jump in the ring as far as that was. And I feel like just having like a regular conversation with them was literally impossible. So it was only just a matter of like back and forth between boom, you just found out you got blocked, and you don't know if they blocked you personally or if they blocked you because you didn't condemn someone who was standing with Vic or whatever that.
Yeah.
So it was just a mess. And I don't know. I've always wanted to make a Vic video, but I just never have because
I kind of wish I knew more about it in a way, but I almost feel like by researching it and starting to get involved in it, I would be kind of starting to open myself up to a whole area of the industry and drama that I'm not interested in, really. I'm not really interested in.
It's so far removed from
American voice actors or whatever. I just don't really.
It has nothing to do with the anime.
Yeah, and it's like
the interesting thing with Dragon Maid specifically, though, is that Jamie Markey and her localization stuff was brought into it.
Yeah, because
and that she on social media was like, I'll take the blame for anything that pisses off you incels or whatever.
Yeah,
I'm like,
I mean, that made me dislike her. But disliking her doesn't necessarily mean that I think she's someone who would lie, but maybe she is. I'm not saying she isn't. I'm not saying I really have I'm basically saying I don't know, and I don't feel like there's a need for me to weigh in on it in any way. It's kind of
there isn't,
but people do tend to want you to, and people do tend to want me to be on the pro Vic side because just because I have Jamie Markey isn't my kind of person doesn't mean that I necessarily want to be like, well, she's a lying bitch then. It's like it's a bit difficult.
You keep those things separate.
Yeah,
but
also because I just don't care about her. She's just not part of what I'm trying to do here. I want to talk about
I'm always trying to foster a more healthy relationship, I think, between the people creating dubs and subtitles and things like that and the people creating things, because I do feel to an extent that these Western sensibilities are growing and people wanting certain things, and that's actually starting to re-inject back into the actual creators themselves and what they're allowed to make.
Yeah.
And that's unfortunate, because I know Sony is a big player in that.
What you're saying, because I do agree that I'm not saying these things aren't important or these people.
No, you're right.
And what they're doing isn't something that is worth talking about, keeping an eye on. It's just that very much for me, it's not what I'm interested in. I talk about the writing more than anything. And so I'm a lot more interested in talking about the writers, the performers in Japan. And that's kind of what I focus on. For somebody more concerned with the way anime is perceived and the fandoms and everything like that, it's certainly worth keeping an eye on who's saying what and what kind of effect the Western kind of localization teams and that can have on how anime is perceived. I still think it's very worth talking about. It's outside of my field of interest.
I wasn't implying that that's what you were at either. No, I just meant that, oddly enough, some of this stuff is carrying over, and it's weird. Sony, for instance, is more of an American company now than it is a Japanese one. And so while I want to hear what stories the Japanese have to tell, they're sometimes being forced to tell certain types of stories.
Yeah.
Or that they might be closer to that, and that's a bit depressing. Or at least whatever they were going to write on their own now can't be, or what they plan to draw, or what kind of characters they were going to make.
I just want to say hi to Necro because he's in the chat now. So we got Necro as well.
Oh,
I'm sure he's got opinions on this stuff too. But
oh, absolutely.
it sounds like he's been up for a very long time though, so we probably shouldn't.
Oh, you haven't slept in 24 hours, oh man.
We shouldn't maybe ask him to elaborate too much. He's probably struggling to
can't-
type.
I can't stay up that late these days. I would, like, my body would literally just fall asleep beforehand.
I just take more pre-workout and stay awake longer. Just more
That's fair.
caffeine.
Oh, that's what you mean. Necro on Vic. Yeah, maybe. I think he may have.
It is the kind of thing that I think has come up either on his streams or his videos, but yeah, you'd have to ask Necro himself what he thinks about that, and you can because he's there, but I can't guarantee he'll reply.
Mm-hmm. I guess one question that'll bring us back into the zone, I guess, might be just like Mushoku Tensei related and stuff. I kind of wanted to, and I think you may have topped on this a little bit before, but Rudius is a character and his problematic past, as it were, and what do you think that adds to the story, and do you like it, or do you wish it were done differently?
I mean, I do like it, as I've said before, in all of my videos, I think, pretty much. I don't really want to sort of go right into it. I went very in depth about this in a video about an interview the author did where he talked about Rudius and whether or not Rudius was too much, you know, whether he went a bit too far with the character. And I think I said everything I could say about it in that video, and obviously that was scripted, so I came across a lot more coherent.
Oh, gotcha.
But,
no, I did watch that video
like
too.
One of those subjects where, you know, talking about it on stream without any preparation, I would probably say something that'll get me cancelled.
Oh. No, that makes sense.
What do you think, though? I mean, I know you're a fan of the story of Mushoku Tensei, but what do you think about the protagonist? Like, do you think the story benefits from him being written the way he is? I mean, you did say earlier you like the setup of him having these kind of problems and difficulties to overcome, but do you like the way that was executed so far? I mean, if you're anime only, you can only sort of comment up to the current point, but how do you feel the story kind of followed through on what it promised with this kind of redemption thing? Because a lot of people feel like Rudius didn't change enough for their liking in the first season.
And that was what I think that was one of the very first takes that I saw on this. I think it was Glass Reflection. He does reviews and stuff.
Yeah.
And he was talking about how, you know, this is a really cool world with lots of great world building, but this one aspect of the character can make it like obnoxiously hard to get into. And then I looked at it, was like, this just makes it so much more compelling to me. I don't know, and it's weird. And I think it kind of comes to like a lot of criticisms people have of Shield Hero, and that they're unable to take a story or a hypothetical from like a real life instance, because it's like people were afraid that Shield Hero was saying this is creating a situation where people will perceive most accusers as liars. And I'm like, no, it's not.
No.
It's saying this one particular character did a really bad thing, and we are all able to see and acknowledge that. That doesn't imply that anyone else is doing the same. And in the same regard, I guess going back to, you know, Rudius, he's a very specific dude, and the more you learn about his circumstances and what he was doing, the better it is to realize they're not advocating like, oh yeah, this is okay or this is normal.
Yeah. And I think that Shield Hero is a good topic here, because this is a video I kind of want to make since I just started reading Shield Hero, and the first Shield Hero novel covers like the first 4 episodes or so. And it goes up to the point where he's challenged to the duel where they will free Raftalia from being his slave and all of this. And she,
Right.
she gives her big moment of awesome speech where he establishes that he trusts her and everything like that. I want to make a video about why Shield Hero is about misogyny, but just not in the way that all the anime feminist type people think it is. Because the whole point of that part of Naofumi's character arc is that once he's betrayed by Mine, and this is very clear in the novels, a lot more than it was in the anime, he actually genuinely does hate and mistrust women to start with. And it's through Raftalia still believing him that he overcomes that and sees that, Mine's behaviours don't represent what all women would want to do or anything like that. And then later he gets over his general paranoia about people in general or people in the royal family, like all the groups that have wronged him, he kind of ends up getting a new perspective on through the other characters. But if the character arc is that he becomes a misogynist for a little while based on being mistreated by one woman, and then he learns that women are not all the same, is that not kind of like the kind of message that the feminist lens would say was a good one for people to have? It's like, maybe it is about misogyny in that first book, but it's about it in a way that's about someone overcoming it. It's not about that being the right way to view women. Or it's like, maybe you view everyone as individuals, and this individual was evil, this other individual who's the same gender is not evil, so you learn to see people for what they do rather than for what they physically are. It's like, maybe you could see it that way. And I'm sure like everyone knows someone who's been, had a bad ex or something, and because of that, for a little while at least, they hate all men or all women for a little while, and then they meet someone else who helps them realize that that's not the right way to think. It's not a kind of a thing that would be unrelatable to most people. Most people know someone who's gone, never dating men again after one bad experience, only to later on think, well, actually, my brother's not like that, and my male friends aren't like that. And they start to see that person as like, that was that one person that was an asshole. That's not what all men are like. And it's like, Naofumi has the same thing. It's like, well, all women are not going to lie about me and betray me. But at first, when that experience is fresh in his mind and nobody's done anything to prove otherwise, that is how he feels. So I think it's kind of like, yeah, that is part of the story, but it's not there to be a story that's anti-women or a story that's teaching men to fear that women will lie about them. It's just like, this is a thing that happened, and when you blame the perpetrator rather than the gender of the perpetrator, then it's reasonable to want revenge on them,
Yeah, no, that's a fantastic idea. I think you should make that video.
I just want to see how people react to me making a video called like Shield Hero is misogynist. It just seems like the kind of thing I wouldn't do. So
yeah, it probably would get people to be like, what? And then be like, oh, actually, no, I do agree with this. I would imagine, at least for your regular viewers.
Yeah, but they're probably all here, so they've just heard me explain the twist.
Well, that's true. But it'll be more eloquent in video form and all that.
Yeah, so. But I'll probably get some clicks from the anime feminist people as well, and they'll be like, oh yes, here's a good video about why Shield Hero is garbage. And I'm like, nope, it's good actually.
Yeah, it's...
But Shield Hero is going to be back in just a couple of weeks, and I haven't got ahead of the anime in the light novels yet. But I'm quite curious to see where it goes in the second season, because the last few episodes after the end of the first main arc we're kind of setting up for some whole complete different thing. And I'm really interested to see kind of what else is going on in this setting, in this world. Don't know if it'll be any good, but I can't wait to see it.
I mean, since you're in the process of recapping it, I'm trying to think of kind of what the last bits of the more recent season has. I don't know. They call it, what is it? Is it season 2 now? Because I guess the first season was 2-tier then, so it had or 2 cores.
It was 2 cores, but it wasn't split, so it was just all aired in one run. But it was 25 episodes.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, so it's a big season.
Yeah,
so
it wasn't like Mushoku Tensei where it was still one season, but it was split into 2 cores, so there was a break in between.
Right, but I guess at the end it was sort of like, yeah, he met the bird girl, right? Like, and she's saying, there's a bigger problem with this world, that if you heroes don't start, cooperating, it's going to be a huge problem. I think that was one of the things they left him with.
Victoria,
right, yeah.
Yeah, and she's sort of told them that, well, she told Naofumi that if he can't cooperate with the other heroes, she'll have to kill them all, because that's the only way that they can summon new heroes, and all of the heroes need to work together.
Right. That's what it was.
So she's basically given him kind of an ultimatum and like a while to kind of make things up with them.
And then they were all on the boats when another invasion occurred.
Yeah, that was kind of like where it ended up going into this other country, and they went there just to like level up and take advantage of this like event where they could get more XP for their kills. But while they were sort of having a beach episode and swimming around, they found this country's dragon hourglass, which is what predicts when the waves are coming, and we're like, oh shit, there's a wave coming here. And then they had to fight it, and they fought it, but then these other heroes from another world came and said that they had to kill the heroes in the world we're watching in order to save their world. And there was a big fight. And I feel like that was taking the story in a whole other direction, and kind of want to see where they're going with it.
Right, and wasn't it at the very end they were going to somewhere brand new that didn't know of the shield hero or something? Or
they were going to another country, I think, but
it was like a more neutral country though, or something good about it.
There's countries where they like worship the shield hero, because,
that's what it was. Yeah.
Yeah, there's quite a lot going on, and it will be interesting to see where it's going. I do feel like there's the potential that it could just end up being a bit all over the place, but we'll see what happens. I don't know what happens later because I haven't got further in the light novels, but I'm intending to get ahead of the anime before season 2 starts so that I can make some in-depth content about it. Quite looking forward to that. It'll be fun.
Yeah, because from a writing perspective, I think a lot of the drama of Shield Hero, what made it really good at those first few episodes was, again, sort of the redemption of this anti-hero who had bad things happen to him, but learns how to, be better about it. But at the same time,
the revenge plot was fun. I mean, like, they did a really good job of making those, mine so unlikable that, I've heard that in the original web novel, like, the actual revenge that was taken against her was a lot more on the edgy side. I kind of want to read the web novel version just to find out what they did. It was a bit more on the like redo of healer type revenge end, rather than just she has to change her name and basically nothing really changes. She still goes around being a bitch afterwards. But
And then
Villainous Queen of Hearts is asking, did you bring up what volume you're on? No, I didn't, but I'm on volume 4 at the moment. I'm still right near the beginning, so I haven't got ahead of the anime, but I'm planning to devote a lot of hours to reading in the next couple of weeks. Sorry, carry on. I just wanted to answer that question.
I was gonna say, like, one of the other like major dramatic questions kind of guiding it, I guess, is, will Naofumi ever want to go back home? That's something they keep bringing up every now and then.
Yeah.
Like, can he, and does he care for it? But now that he's found, Raftalia and stuff, would he have a reason to stay? Is that even possible? That's something that a lot of isekai stories have gone unfinished. And so they never actually get around to that question in the end.
Oh, there are
And so
some
to
that
see
are
it,
still going, but they're just not near the end yet. I mean, like ReZero, you know, there's still another like 4 arcs to go.
yep. And I don't know what I don't know how those stories end.
Mushoku
So
Tensei
I
has an ending, but where he's reincarnated, it's not really a question of whether he can go home. That's never really going to be a thing if you're already dead. So
that's true.
It's, you know, more the summoning type stories. So like Shield Hero, Overlord, ReZero, all those kinds of things. It's like the trying to get home was always a trope in the old isekai stories, you know, like Digimon and things like that. But in the more narrow K type stuff, usually we're supposed to sort of be on board with the idea that this is their life now and this new world either needs them or is better to begin with for them going back home. So it tends to either not get brought up, it's just kind of forgotten, or it's part of some really long-term mystery. Like with ReZero, I'm sure that whether or not he can go home will become part of the final sequences of revelations, you know, but at the moment we're just sort of left with, well, if there is a way for him to go home, he doesn't know what it is and he's focused on dealing with stuff here now, you know.
Right. I guess I just mean like the isekai mechanic coming back around and being relevant toward the end, like why this person in the first place. It depends on the story.
Yeah.
But like ReZero, one thing that kept me going for the longest time is, you know, it's like, well, why does he have these powers? What's so special about him? Why was he pulled from there? And
what
do any of these witches have
to
do with this other world that he came from?
Yeah, for sure. That's like,
and not all stories give a crap about answering it, but I think it's always a fascinating one.
What's cool is that, I'm not going to spoil anything here, but Mushoku Tensei, even though he is reincarnated, so there's not really any reason for this to be part of the story, but it still is. This is all explained, like why him, why he's there, or at least how he's there. It's all explained in the end, but in like the very final chapter of the web novel. It's really cool. You should read it. You'd love it.
Yeah. And that's interesting because you have a very, you know, obviously a very literature heavy background to it. And light novels are still kind of new to me because I've always been like on more of the visual side.
Yeah.
For sure. And so then I'm like, the idea of going and just reading it, like I'm going to sit there trying to like put my image of the characters onto the written descriptions of them as much as I can.
Yeah. But with light novels, you know, there's already artwork, so the characters in the anime are based on the artwork from the light novels anyway, so they don't look different. It's still, you know, it's not like when you like try and read A Song of Ice and Fire and you picture all the people from Game of Thrones and you're like, but wait, they're all different ages and stuff. It doesn't work, you know. But yeah, you know, it's kind of, I don't know. I have aphantasia, so when I read books, I don't picture anything. And for me, light novels are great because you can just see what the characters look like. There's just drawings of them, so...
Well, yeah, but you're still imagining it as you read the text based on the reference pictures they show you. But you're not seeing them, like, literally in every sense. There's a lot of, you know...
I don't even really imagine what things look like when I'm reading them. I more, like, picture how the conversations go and things like that. And, I mean, I was a novelist before I started YouTube. And that's actually how I write as well. I don't really picture the scenes. I just sort of... I kind of imagine the flow of conversation and the kind of tones of people's voices and what they're thinking or feeling. But half the time I don't even describe the characters beyond what colour hair they have or, you know, any like distinguishing features. And when I'm reading a book and there's like really detailed descriptions and it's like what shape her eyebrows are and like he's got a chin that's like this and like I can't picture any of that. Just skip, you know. Just give me a drawing. That's better.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, no, I'm just saying, like, as far as having an affinity for literature and wanting to read it and having that basis there makes it really easy to merge being an anime fan and then being like a light novel fan and stuff. Whereas for me, it's sort of like I don't normally read on my own times, but if it's something I'm interested in like this, I would more than be happy to do it.
Yeah, I think I like reading ahead on the anime and light novels, but I never used to do it. I used to just watch anime, even though honestly there were years when I wrote more novels than I read. I never used to really read much at all because I just didn't have time. And when you're writing novels for a job, usually the ones you read are things you're just skimming through to get the story structure for something that you want to kind of use. Someone's hired you to write a romance novel and you kind of want some idea of what kind of things they're expecting to be in it, so you skim read a few of those. It's that kind of thing. It's like it's a job. Whereas since I got into things like ReZero, I just wanted to know what happened next, so I read it, and then I found now I know more things about it. I can really appreciate the kind of things the author's trying to do, because when you've written stuff yourself, you can also follow the author's thought process. It's not just the thought process of the characters. When you're trying to kind of come up with theories or something, you're also able to put into that kind of process, but would the author actually do that? Why would he do that? Would that set up problems for him later on, And, I just found that it was a lot more interesting to start considering things like the big mysteries and theories and all of that I liked doing, if I got as much information as I could from the authors, So it's not really like I'm a bookworm or anything. I like these stories and I want to know as much as possible,
Well, that's fair, especially because, a lot of when you find out that so much of the anime you watch is just adaptations anyway of either it be manga or other things. If you try to just your perception of it can be completely different than somebody who does know what the source material was like. And I think obviously the biggest sting I ever felt for that was The Promised Neverland. I don't know if you follow that show.
Oh god, yeah, no, I've read the manga, which I thought was good, and I watched season 1, which I thought was great, and then I watched season 2. So I know exactly what you're talking about.
The biggest is I don't usually like to point at anime and say well, this is a bad anime, but
no, that was
just
failure.
A disappointing
yeah.
Anime.
It was that slideshow at the end. There was just this slideshow.
Yeah, it's they accomplished world peace in a 15-second montage.
Yeah. And there's
I'm there's some final bottles and stuff that are supposed to be in there.
If you've read the manga as well, you can kind of see that it's referencing things that people would have no idea what they were just from the anime. There's a dragon in there, and there's this little god guy, and you're wait, all those things were in this series? Why didn't you show us that instead?
Yeah, that's where she's supposed to renegotiate the promise or whatever. That's a critical part of the story. And that's not even touched upon in the...
But I was kind of trying to imagine being an anime only and seeing that montage and go, well, that stuff looks a lot more interesting than what you actually showed. Come on.
Mm-hmm.
But no, it was awful. At first, when I didn't realise they were going to skip the whole Goldie Pond arc, I thought they were actually doing some quite interesting things with the changes. By episode 3 or whatever, there were some changes, but I thought, wow, they skipped that underground tree bit. That wasn't a big deal. They're doing some interesting things. And then it's just no, time skip. And what? Here's Norman. What? Just why?
Yeah. And it makes you realize that those dramatic and emotional moments really are built on the development that came before. And without that development, you're just sort of I don't feel it. It's oh great, Norman's back, yay.
Yeah.
It's but that was one of the coolest things to find out. I mean, maybe you suspected he was still there, but to find out how and what he'd been up to.
Yeah, because the biggest mystery of the first season was what happened to him though. Because you just saw that he opened a door and looked surprised, when he was taken off to be harvested. Isabella took him to a room and he looked surprised, and that was the last you saw of him. So you're yeah, he's probably still alive, but what's he doing and where's he been? And in the manga there were little hints at that, and then you were yes, he's finally reunited with them. We get to find out all of the stuff that's been going on with him. And in the anime it's just here's Norman though, and everyone's
the fear is that he had changed so much too. It's oh, is this even... Yeah.
They skipped all half the cast, because half the allies that they have came from the Goldie Pond arc. And
That's
it's
true.
like, so most of the characters that people wanted to see weren't even in it. And
And
then,
Emma never held a gun.
yeah.
Really, really weird.
And then there was that whole thing with that old man giving them the pen and like having a daughter called Emma, so that made Norman not want to do the... And Norman's plan made no sense in the anime anyway. It's like, yeah, it would be much easier to turn everyone feral and then fight them. Whereas in the manga, he only did that to like the nobles. That was the plan. And there was that whole
Right,
like
yeah, because there was
betrayal.
actually
And then there
other
was
demons,
like the
like the
queen
guy with
and
the
all that.
monkey.
There was that queen, and there was that whole like gang of them that he got to betray the others, and they were pulling this whole double cross, and it was like, that was interesting and cool, and the queen was really awesome. And they had that fight against the queen, and she had like Sister Crone
Like inside her,
inside
yeah.
her, and she comes and like eggs the kids on and all that. She gets like a little bit of a redemption in like head inside a demon form. It's like that stuff was all awesome. And then the anime was just like, no, Norman just changes his mind because someone's called Emma, and then he's got like a pen, and they give it to them, and then they've got all the plans for the site that they need to go to. It's like, no, that's shit. Shut up.
It was obviously a huge budgetary nightmare where they had to wrap it up in a single season, so they had to do these weird rewrites, but it's like, well, yeah, now you realize why people care so much about the source material, because that's where usually the more genuine ideas are. And when something like Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood comes out and it's finally going to be faithful to that source material, you're like, wow, okay, well, this is good.
I wonder if they will ever make anything like that of The Promised Neverland. I mean, I guess with Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood, it was done that way just because the manga wasn't finished and the anime got ahead of the manga. And I think I've never seen the original, I've only seen Brotherhood. But I think that people have quite a good opinion of the original. It's just different, right? It's not like people hate
and it wasn't made because they were rushed.
No.
It was more so they just decided to create a completely original ending. It wasn't it's not Brotherhood ending like chopped down and mangled and murdered. No. It's a completely different thing. And that's why it's pretty cool.
Yeah, and people tend to like it. I mean,
like they even finished it off with like a completely different feature film that has nothing to do with Brotherhood. It's like, yeah, that's pretty neat.
Yeah. I mean, I haven't seen it, but I believe it starts fairly similar, but you get like... Is it that in the original Full Metal Alchemist you get way more of Shao Tucker, though?
You do.
Because I always thought it was funny that he was... I don't know if he still is, but he was for a long time like the most hated character on my anime list. And it's like he's not really a threat to the main characters. He's barely in it. In Brotherhood, he's in like one episode. It's just like
threat.
He's such an
but
arse.
You get to see him. You get to trust him more before you find out what he's all about.
Right.
And that's the biggest part. And yeah, I think they dedicated a lot more time to those initial arcs.
Yeah.
In the original, whereas in Brotherhood they assume you've already seen it and are kind of like rushing through it again, which I think was a bad idea, because
I mean, I kind of still got
you kind of need to watch.
He sucks.
It's sort of like yeah,
but it was
like
kind of,
it's not as good as it could have been.
It was kind of funny that character is so hated. I mean, not funny that he's hated, because it's obviously that's the intention of him, but it's just like that he's hated more than actual antagonists of other series or anything. It's just that guy that's in like one episode. Just specifically fuck him. That's like,
yeah, he was more of a specific arc. And for fans growing up at the time with the original 2004 show, shoosh, I think it was.
Yeah.
Yeah, they definitely had more time to breathe that whole arc.
Okay, well, it is now... We've been going for like 2 hours and 40 minutes, so I feel like we should probably wrap this up fairly soon. I don't want to keep you all night.
Yeah, absolutely.
This has been fun, but, you know, I did tell you that the chat will ask us all sorts of things. So if we're going to wrap up in the next few minutes, if anybody has any urgent questions for DaiKun or for myself, just let us know now. Otherwise, is there anything you'd particularly like to say to our lovely audience before we end the stream?
I guess overall that, you know, if you've come from my channel to watch this stream, definitely check out Natalie's videos. I really started liking her comment. We found similar mentality on, like, I guess the whole moralities thing. We both made videos on that, and ever since then I've been looking at her stuff. She does a lot of deep dives into isekai stories. Tons of videos on Mushoku Tensei and ReZero, and yes, God, we can deal with that. Come to my stream next time.
Ada, thank you, God Howard, and thank you for your contributions during this stream. But sounds like the answer for you is yes, so that's good, right?
But yeah, no, I'll look into that. But let's see here.
Succubus Bait says, not a question, but I want to say thank you for the fun times. I can't donate, but can I get an Ada? Now, at Succubus Bait, you can always get an Ada. So, Ada, thank you, Succubus Bait. And not just because
what are we looking forward to
I
next
like saying
season?
his name. What are we looking forward to next season? For me, I'm looking forward to Kaguya-sama, obviously Shield Hero, Ascendance of a Bookworm. There's actually already another season of Komi-san coming out next season. Next season is going to be awesome. I'm really, really hyped for it.
Yeah.
What do you think?
There's so much I need to, like, let me to pull up that list real quick.
Ada, thank you, SF Giants fan Mike. Sorry. Once I get late into these streams, I can no longer speak very well, and I try and say people's names, and it's like, blah, 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 blah.
No, you said it right. At least I think. That's how I say it.
I only say Ada.
Yeah, there's a couple, like, there's a lot of stuff I don't know if it'll be any good, but I'm excited to see. There's a golf anime called Birdie Wing that I'm kind of interested in.
Aren't there like
one called
2 separate soccer anime coming out next season as well? Like,
there might be,
because I like some sports anime and I like some soccer, so I could.
There's a really pretty one that got announced called Bubble. I don't know anything about it, but it just had amazing animation.
I
think
not
that
heard
one's
anything
coming
about
out.
that. I'm only really up on which sequels are coming. I haven't actually looked at the new shows yet. But I believe there's going to be some good stuff. Sequels wise, I've been kind of like keeping up with the news. But when it comes to like each season, I normally just feel like, yeah, I'm just going to see what's on. Because I always watch nearly everything, at least episode 1, and then
somebody was really excited about
stick with.
Yeah. One called Spy X Family, which I've heard of.
I've heard a lot about that. A lot of people have recommended the manga to me. I haven't read it yet, but I think, I'll definitely watch the anime, but I normally have a little look at the start of something before I...
Yeah, Shield Hero. I watched the first season of Komi. That was pretty fun.
Yeah. Just Chick says you're British, call it football like the rest of us. Why do people always assume that I don't pronounce the T's in words? They're all like, say bottle of water. I'm like, no, it's bottle of water. Right. Wait till my next stream when I get Jake Z123 on here. You can get him to say that, because he actually does pronounce things that way. Ada, thank you, Matthew McAfee. Which video would you each recommend from the other's channel? I would definitely recommend checking out any of Daikun's more commentary type videos, because those are the ones I've really watched. So the one about the flaws in the way anime feminist critiques shows, I felt was a particularly interesting one. There's actually the most recent one, which is about tomboys, which I thought was really good. But it was actually your wife that made that one, right? That was
Dai-chan is a character that I write and do she just plays the voice of. Basically.
Oh, right, okay. So she does the voice acting, but you write the script. Mm-hmm. So it was still your...
She has her own character where sometimes she comes on as herself.
Yeah.
But the Dai-chan, yeah, it's sort of... weird little thing. I kind of wanted a female avatar, but had no other way of doing it conceivably that I
Yeah, no, it's
felt
cool.
comfortable doing, I guess.
But it was still your script, so that was still
Yes.
your thoughts in there, and it was a really good video in appreciation of tomboys. But it actually goes more into sort of like the reasons why the term tomboy is useful, and why being able to identify characters in that way is just a kind of helpful shorthand for appreciating the characters, kind of thing. And also that those characters are fun and good. So I think that would be one that I'd recommend you watching, even though that's a brand new one.
Mm-hmm. And you've got a bunch. One that I watched recently that I thought I really liked was, In Defense of Dragon Maid. I think that was well put. It was very well put, and it's kind of it's under a similar vein where I'm like, wait, but Dragon Maid is such a sweet and adorable show, but yeah, it's
Yeah.
it seems really politically incorrect when you watch it, but then at the same time, it's so sweet, and I kind of think like this would be a much better world to raise children in than even the real one that we have.
See, I kind of think with Dragon Maid, like normally I don't make videos about comedy series because I feel like once you start explaining the jokes, they're just not funny anymore. So even though a lot of my favorite shows are things like Konosuba, I really like romantic comedies like Kaguya-sama and Nagatoro and My Dress Up Darling, things like that. I never make content about them because once you start talking about jokes and why they're funny, because I mainly tend to talk about the more sort of technical side of what's going on with the writing and all of that. You can talk about most types of character arc, but you can't really dissect jokes without just ruining the enjoyment, really. And so I hardly ever talk about some of my favourite shows because they're comedies. And with Dragon Maid, it was like, well, okay, I am going to explain why the jokes in Dragon Maid work. But there's a reason, and it's like, I'm going to explain why they work so I can explain why they're not offensive, which you just have to do with Dragon Maid all the time because people have got it into their heads that it's like some kind of anime adaptation of Mein Kampf or something. It's like this lovely show about
it's got a
friendship
really weird
and love.
reputation. Yeah,
it's like friendship
There's
and
way worse
acceptance and things.
Well, one of the things you said was like redo of Healer, for instance, is like way more intense, but it doesn't get the same kind of
Because I think
because
the kind of people they don't expect to like redo of Healer, but they think that something like Kobayashi's Dragon Maid is going to be for them because it's got gay romance and it's got wholesome stuff and it's got slice of life and all of that, and it's like, yeah, it is all of those things, but it's also otaku comedy with adult comedy in it. It's not there for it's there to make you laugh, but it's only there to make you laugh if you get the jokes and aren't just horrified by it. But
what other comedies do you like?
all of them. No. At the moment, well, I really like pure comedies. I really like Psyche K. Have you ever seen that, The Disastrous Life of Psyche K?
I haven't seen it, but I've heard good things, so that's
Yeah.
probably one I'm going to check out based on recommendation.
That's like a proper gag anime, where the format is like 3 short stories per episode normally, and it's the guy's got like all these psychic powers, but he tries to live a normal life, but it goes really over the top. I mean, it is a gag anime. It's really funny though. That's the kind of thing I watch when I'm just like in a bad mood or something, and I want something that's just funny. I really love Konosuba. Yeah, I did actually do a whole stream of recommendations for comedy anime though, and there were so many that I hadn't seen that other people were recommending. So, and I must admit I haven't got around to watching any of them yet that I said I would add to my to-watch list because I've been really busy trying to catch up on things ready for next season. So I rewatched all of A Sentence of a Bookworm, I rewatched all of Shield Hero, trying to do recap videos of those and read the light novels. It's all a lot of things.
Yeah,
What
Konosuba, I think after all these years has absolutely been one of the funniest. It's like the modern Slayers.
Yes,
And
Slayers
I love
is another one of
Slayers.
my favorites, but Slayers, I think Konosuba knows that it's it's the modern Slayers as well. I don't think Megumin could exist without Lena Inverse references. So,
Oh, that's true.
Ada, thank you again, God Howard. Guys, watch Yu-Gi-Oh! 5DS, best Yu-Gi-Oh! Don't at me. I've never watched any of Yu-Gi-Oh! Have you?
I was always on the Pokemon train growing up.
Yeah, me too. Well, I didn't really watch anime at all growing up, actually. I didn't get into anime until I was in my 20s. So,
It was one of those things I don't think I realized was anime. It was just like, oh, this
yeah,
cool show. And then later I was like, oh, these are all the same kind of thing. Like I was into Sailor Moon and
yeah,
My Neighbor Totoro before I understood what those were.
yeah. I remember watching Pokemon and Digimon and things like that and knowing they were Japanese, but I don't really think of them as like anything different to, I thought of them as like video game shows, not anything like of their own. They were just like the animes of games, kind of like there was like Sonic the Hedgehog cartoons back in the day and things like that. I just thought it was like that, really. But yeah, I didn't really become familiar with anime as a thing until about 8 years ago, when I got into Attack on Titan, and I just never really looked back. And for the years after that, like all I watched was anime. I watch maybe like 3 shows a year that aren't anime now.
Yeah, Attack on Titan is really enigmatic because, like, sometimes I feel like it's overrated, but at the same time, when it first came out, it blew me away too. Like, if we're just like marathoning it, like whatever we could get our hands on, and I think it's just kind of gone on for a really long time. I think it's fitting that it's coming to an end soon because it's a very different show now than when it started.
Yeah, I mean, everything changes around the basement, But that was still one of the coolest reveals in
Oh, I know.
in stories. I love it.
We need to see what's in the basement, but we don't even know what's in the basement, but we want to know.
When I watched the first season, I was like, but do we get to find out what's in the basement soon? And at the time, that wasn't even in the manga yet. I was like, okay. So I started reading the manga. And when you eventually got to it in the manga, it's like, this is going to be so cool when it's in the anime. And it was. And yeah. But after that, I think, they'd kind of blown their load when it came to big reveals. So it was kind of, okay, the Marley arc was a bit like, I want to see what comes after that. When I was reading it, it didn't feel quite as impactful. And then I'm not going to talk about what's still to come in the final season because I think most people know I've read the manga because I made a video about the ending. But yeah, I won't talk about that on this stream. What have we got here? Ezra Falk. Here's what I was trying to ask you earlier. Why there's almost never any blood or gore in violent anime games unless it has a mechanical purpose, even though there's plenty in violent anime shows. I don't know about that, really. I did see you ask that question a few times, but I don't really have any thoughts on it. It's probably something to do with the way that games have different ratings and licensing it to anime. They're usually licensed by different boards that have different standards for what's mature, what's not mature, and all of that. And usually they don't want things to have the mature ratings because that means they can be sold to a more limited audience. But
you've definitely hit the nail on the head there. Yeah, it's interesting because I watch a channel called Censored Gaming that kind of talks about usually when stuff gets brought to the West, but then they talk in reverse when Western stuff gets brought to Japan. And it's interesting to see, their Sero ratings board is extremely strict and they view violence a lot more strongly than the West does. But inversely, you'd expect, obviously, we're way more susceptible to sexual things.
yeah.
Whereas they're way more open to it. But at the same time, in a console game for Japan, you will never see anything more than like Barbie doll style like anatomy, I guess. And if you were to see anything more than that, that's why you have like Senran Kagura has like the shining lights and things to comedically censor.
But then at the same time, I mean, I've been playing the Yakuza games, and there is like a mini game in Yakuza Kiwami 2, which is one of the recent like remakes of one of the old PS2 games. And it has this like Gravere Idol mini game, which has like real live footage of real Gravere idols. And so there's this mini game where you just take pictures of girls, basically. But that's censored out of at least the version that was on Xbox Game Pass. It might have been
Hmm.
specifically censored in that version, but that was censored on the Xbox. Even though it was
Yeah,
just
but she
kind
was
of like,
never nude in there, right?
no,
It
I
was
don't think so.
like
But I
bikini
don't know
level,
because
kind
I
of, right?
never saw it because it was
Ah, okay.
censored.
Because I have a very strong feeling that if it was on a console, they would not allow that. And
Yeah.
similarly with the blood and violence, I think there was like, I
Yeah.
mean, obviously things like decapitations they have to censor out and
Yeah.
stuff if it comes to the Japan. So they tend to avoid the bloody stuff. And
Whereas
then
in anime, it's licensed by a completely different board. They have a lot more ratings levels for, they can put it on at midnight if they want to put a load of gore in it, which is usually the time when a lot of the shows that we talk about are aired. They won't put ReZero on in the middle of the afternoon. That goes on at
yeah,
midnight.
Subaru's just got it too bad.
Yeah, they're not going to show, when kids are coming home from school, like fucking 10-year-olds coming home from school watching Subaru Gate and Alive by Rabbits and stuff. It's like, so it's kind of like for the games, I think it's more about making them available for the largest audience possible with a stricter rating system than they have for TV. That's, I think, the
Yeah.
answer to
If you go
that.
PC, the gloves are off because that's when you get into all the eroge and stuff like that.
Yeah, but equally, I mean, I think those get censored more in the West purely because of Steam's
Well,
regulations.
yeah, they get censored in the West,
They want to
but like
sell
in
it.
Japan
Yeah,
is where they don't care.
they want to be able to sell it on Steam, and obviously you can sell eroge on Steam, but you also have to make sure it doesn't have any characters that are under 18 in it. So that's when they get to like drawing girls in different outfits because they were wearing a school uniform in the original or something like that. And it seems
Yeah, and
super silly, but you can kind of go, well, if that's what they need to do just to sell it, then,
and that's why we hope that anybody who sells on Steam will be able to do like an off-site, like uncensored patch or something.
Yeah,
It's
I
like
think
I don't
that's,
mind. Like I think I'm not against the idea of there being different versions of a game
and I'm not
for different
against,
people.
I'm not against the idea of people trying to make money either. It's like, if that's what you have to do to sell it on the biggest platform. I've certainly censored some of my own work so I could sell it on Amazon before.
But yeah, you got personal
Some
experience with that.
sometimes you gotta just go in line with the place that has the most customers for the thing that you're trying to sell. And a lot of the time they're not even censoring you because they have particular beliefs or anything that you wouldn't agree with, or they think censorship is good even. They just don't want the hassle of getting a load of social media backlash over somebody going, oh look, there's a paedophile game on Steam. They just don't want that. So
Well, yeah,
they take the schoolgirl and they put her in a different outfit and say she's now in college, and that's what they do. And it's like, you can see why they do it. It's, but it's also it's kind of lame that things have to be changed. But the fact that they are, and the way that they are, isn't always quite as annoying as we tend to assume it is. It's like, oh god, they're just at it again, at it with the censorship. And it's like, sometimes it's just for commercial reasons, and you can't really hold that against them.
Yeah, that's fair. Though whenever I see a company try to do their best to release something uncensored, even if I wasn't necessarily interested in it to begin with, I would go out of my way to buy it.
Yeah.
Or buy it on the less popular platform that will allow it
Yeah,
to
I mean, I do
be
personally,
uncensored.
I would rather see the thing as it was originally intended, But I think that quite a lot of the time, people who are very against censorship, which I would count myself as being one of, still kind of can overreact a bit to things that are clearly just done for commercial reasons, like a game not wanting to be licensed with a certain rating that will make it difficult to sell, or not being able to sell on Steam or something like that. It's like, if the reasons for the censorship are ones that you can at least say, well, I can understand why the company did that,
Yeah.
It's not just like,
And
well, they thought that Western people would be upset by this. It's like, well, when that is the reason, it sucks and I hate it.
Well, yeah, and that's when the battle comes down to changing those perceptions. Like,
Yeah,
maybe the
yeah,
West can understand that a schoolgirl isn't necessarily the most raunchy, lewd thing.
yeah. Or that,
And yeah,
like
that's
you can be a schoolgirl and not be like only interested in pony stickers and homework until the day you turn 18 as well, Like it's possible for
that's true. Yeah,
teenagers to
there's nuance to these things.
yeah.
But someone
Yeah.
asked if you knew much about Grimgar.
I don't know anything about Grimgar. I haven't watched it or read it. That's the answer to that. I'm sorry. I would like to read it or watch it, but it's kind of on the list of things that I would like to get to at some point. It's not something I know anything about that I can talk about, really.
Yeah. The anime was really pretty, but it just goes to read the source material once it ends. It just drops off on a cliffhanger and hasn't had a season in years. So
There
probably
are so
never
many
will.
like that. Okay, well, I think that this is a good moment to call it a night. Thank you so much for coming, though. It's been really nice having you on.
Oh, yes, and I'm getting a call. So thank you for having me very much.
Okay, well, I'm going to end the stream then so you can answer your call. Good night, everyone,
Absolutely.
and thank
Night.
you. Or good afternoon, whatever time you're in. Thank you all. Bye.
Bye-bye.